Varsity Radio with Andrew Rogers and Damon Benning.
Runner goes. The pitch is swung on. A drive to right field. Hit well. Going back for it. Palacios just looks up, and it is gone. A two-run homer for Peterson. Oh, is he out? He's 4 for 4, and the A's lead 7-2.
The 0-1. Springer rockets it. Deep left center field. Back at the wall. Myers jumps in the air. It's gone! A go-ahead two-run home run for George Springer.
Pitch, swing and a blast in the air out into deep left, and he's done it again. Two-run homer up into that second level of bleachers.
Just to legitimize that he has real power to go along with oppo power in the short porch. Let's just say that that's about as far as a ball that he's probably ever hit in his life.
3-0.
1-2 pitch. Breaking ball hammered down the left field line. This ball is going to one-hop the wall, and this game is over. Joey Weaver with his second walk-off of the season, and the Brewers third, and they win it 4-3 in 10.
It's that time again. Coffee and Cream in the morning on Hail Varsity Radio, powered by Currency. Good morning to everybody out there.
What up,
DB?
How are we?
Things are good. Things are good. I'm wearing my Average Joe's T-shirt today.
That's the dodgeball people, right?
Sure is. Yeah. I'm just strictly average.
If you can dodge a ball, you can dodge anything. Sometimes you kind of feel like that, right? But it just is what it is. The ebbs and flows of
dodging a ball or feeling
confidence, where we belong in this world, constantly trying to find our place.
I wore this today because I thought it was very fitting to how PGA players must be feeling right now.
Yeah, the more stuff kept coming out, I was like, huh. But you know what? I still think, I thought for sure this was inevitable.
I still think
not like
I still think that,
not like Thanos, right?
Mm-hmm.
With this, I am inevitable.
Mm-hmm.
No, but it's just a lot of money on the table. I did not I know one thing. It's amazing when people have access to resources and stuff, how it doesn't guarantee anything. Like, just because Monahan has access and, man, his PR team, not very good.
Mm-mm.
Not very good. And it's always frustrating, too, because I know a lot of times, studies will show, revenue earners have a certain amount of aptitude. But, man, just because there are certain revenue earners doesn't mean you have a certain amount of aptitude. Like not a good day for the brass to share information yesterday.
Yeah, I mean, it's one thing for us to feel like it was inevitable because at some point you saw this happening. But just a year removed from the ban,
thought maybe a couple years.
Yeah, it was just weird because you see it yesterday and you're like, huh, okay, like kind of saw it coming, but you don't really think about the players right then and there just yet until you see them start to come out with things like, oh, well, thanks for telling me.
Yeah.
Or, oh, appreciate the opportunity to play for a year and totally go all in on, hey, we're not going to join the live. I'm going to forego an 8 to 9 figure salary in order to stay here, be a part of the tradition. Like I'm a part of this group. Like this is me. This is what built me. There's loyalty there.
If it's my money, it's different. If it's your money, we're all in. I mean, and that's basically what happened, right? But
I mean, this is a tour that preaches loyalty, and they're like, "Stay loyal to us. We've got you. We've got your back." And then behind a brown door, 5 people are sitting at a table, and they have a secret meeting, and they come to the conclusion of, "Oh, 2 people that aren't players in this meeting. Yeah, I think it's a good idea, so I'm going to speak for my players."
Yeah, and it's right in historical context. It happens all the time, right? There's times, like, I think individually I would like to do and say some things on a personal level in terms of worth and value that probably would not be in line with company policy, right? Where you want to say some things about, worth and this, that, and the other. And there's always going to be a different vantage point, right? So somebody else could say, hey, listen, you know what? I know what you think. This is the reality of it. We could either meet somewhere in the middle. You can hang in there. We can try to, like I've had these conversations and negotiations for 20 years. Now, I do think the big thing about the players is it sounds like they maybe even could have understood if they would have been afforded the time to come to the table to have the discussion.
Why do you think other leagues have players associations? For this reason.
Well, but remember, going back a year, I think we felt like one of the byproducts from this would be more transparency from the PGA with the players in terms of sponsorships, because I don't think most people understand how golf works. There's lots of little separate factions that come across, and we just bottom line it and say the PGA. Like there are several separate entities, right? Well, the Open Committee, the Masters, the PGA Association versus the PGA Tour. Like, it's not super straightforward. It's almost like, I remember, I don't know if you've kind of gotten into this, but I had a fantastic, it was enlightening, right? I wasn't like overly moved by the information that was disseminated, but I had a conversation with the boss. This was probably a couple of months ago, and it first started over text, and I didn't really understand it. I mean, there's a lot. I was kind of like, ooh, I a little, my hair. I don't have any hair really on my arms, but whatever. I kind of bristled a little bit, and then he and I had a conversation over the phone, or maybe it's over the phone. I don't know what it was. Anyway, we talked, right? I'm historically a fan, and I was like, oh, okay, that makes some sense. Like, I have a pretty good understanding of the dynamics. Now, would I have liked to have known some things ahead of time, or like told to me, and before it was like told to me? Sure, but there's this part of evolution and kind of maturity where you're like, okay, I get it. At least I'm operating in the know, because most times I think that's all people really want to know. Right. And because you can leave it up to them to do with the information what they will. It's out there. We're talking. I may not love it. And in this case, it didn't move my emotional meter one way or the other. I just felt like I was empowered with information. Right. Some people say I remember Jay Noddle used to always tell me, he would say things like, hey, I'm going to handicap you with the facts. Right. So, and he, by that, he means, listen, we can know some things. It could be, I don't know how you're going to use it. maybe paralysis by analysis. It may be whatever, but let me handicap you with the facts. So I always operate of just wanting to know. You've heard me say things like, golly, I can play any game. I just want to know the rules. Like I trust me to figure out how to adjust. And I think with the players, the degree of difficulty in this one, my guy, is they have such a finite skill. And I think they just want to be compensated for that skill, because we've talked about this 1,000 different times. The more finite the skill, typically the more wiggle room you have in terms of compensation. And when this is historical, right? The worker bees versus the queen bee. The queen bee gets all the glory because they're the overseer. Like, there's this totem pole thing in capitalism,
and you're protected by
and then there's
the group around you.
Then there's the labor force, right? So this has happened this is historical context. This isn't like earth shattering. It just happens to be the news because of how it was disseminated.
Yeah, it's the bad taste in the mouth.
But it's typically how the world works.
Yeah, but that's how business works, right? You make a business decision by, taking money or merging so that you're not competing against one or the other. You can become one thing.
It's why people strike. At some point you pit your worth versus value. See, people always interchange the two.
Right.
They're not the same. Worth and value are not the same. So it's like even people with CBA, like with unions and CBAs and things like that, there's always this push-pull with workers versus the establishment. And I think when you're playing an individual sport, like golf, and you have to think collectively as a group, it's very difficult. But man, do you want to be part of a union? Like I remember when I was with the district, I wasn't part of OEA. I didn't pay the dues for protection in OEA. And now for some that's good, and you got to weigh that situation, but without some sort of like built-in checks and balances, you run the risk of having things like this. And when you start hearing the numbers, and we don't know how real they are with Saudi money, or where the PGA is with their sponsorships and taking care of guaranteed stuff with the golfers, we do know one thing: the payout purses seem to be pretty big, right? So I mean,
even if you get 50th, you're still probably taking home $45K.
Well, we did the math. Was it the Open or the Masters?
I think it was the Masters.
Right. Last place after making the cut was
probably about 50K.
No, it wasn't quite. I think it was like 28 or something like that. Right.
Yeah, that's probably more true.
And I'm like, for a weekend, I'd take that. Right.
All you got to do is score.
And we say all you got to do
plus 2.
But I say all that to say it's the same as my John Morant thing, right? And this is just me with age. Me 25 years ago, probably would say something different. But me now is like, I understand with compensation comes some concessions. And it happens in hospitals all the time. I happen to know 3 or 4 anesthesiologists. That world and its politics at the hospital can be aggravating, and things that you wouldn't even think happen within those fields in which people are compensated extremely well still bugs some people. So the admin workforce tug of war is, man, it's as old as capitalism, right? Which I don't condone how Monahan handled it, because I would not want him. He doesn't appear to be a person that I would want representing what I do. But I'm not sure what other choices they have.
See, right? You could have handled it so much better.
Well, there's no question.
And so that's why there's a lot of blame that goes on Monahan here, because you just did not stand by your players. You sat in a chair a year ago and told your players to stand by your side. Don't go take the money.
Shane, Tammy Wynette.
Stand by my side.
Stand by your man.
Correct.
You will be better off here versus raking in the dough. And then a year later, without even consulting those players that were so committed to you, you go and just stab them right in the back. That's what I don't like.
Listen, is there anything more upsetting for people as we go through this than the abstract term of loyalty? It's pretty polarizing. We hear it in fan bases. You hear it from front office to player. You hear it
in government.
Like this whole concept of loyalty. It's the perfect example of why you shouldn't confuse value versus worth. As somebody that is loyal, that will go to the ends of the earth for somebody, you assume that has a certain value. It may not be worth a ton to who you're working for. So do you understand what I'm telling you? Like,
I do.
And it's a rub, and it has happened for most recently, Lamar Jackson. Hey, man, I have been loyal to this franchise. Take care of me. How much is that worth? It's worth X amount. You ain't been that loyal. Right now, eventually, it turns out he was. But I'm just telling you, if you strip away all the politics, the dissemination of the information, the transparency, it typically boils down to not being on the same page if you're going to use the term loyalty.
Well, I think it is a little bit different too with golf versus football in this case, because if it was a football example, it'd be Goodell that does something that affects the league.
I'll give you a local one, right? And he intimated this a couple weeks ago in Lincoln. The worth of in-state recruits in the grand scheme of perception, being loyal to in-state guys because they're in-state, and the actual value that folks think they have while they're being recruited. It's typically none of those three things are the same, but they're all using the same word, right? Loyalty. Well, I feel like I should with in-state guys. And we've heard this with all sorts of different head coaches. And there's never a clear connection on the whole value versus worth thing. Fans have a different perception than, like, let's say the coaching staff, the players sometimes have a different perception of what they're owed versus the coaching staff. They're almost never on the same page unless you have those outward conversations. And which is why we had this whole 20-minute filibuster yesterday, if you will.
Is it just 20 minutes?
Of why you want to operate in the know. When I went through
transparency.
When you went through the whole thing,
you have to be transparent.
Hey man, don't ask the questions that you don't want to know the answers to.
Right.
And just tell me. Right. I may not like it, but man, at least I know I got options.
Words right there couldn't be more true, because
that's what this whole thing is.
It's more than just golf too. I mean, you can get it anywhere.
For
transparency
sure.
is the ultimate trump card.
No question.
And that actually goes back into the loyalty thing. Like, yeah, you can think one thing, you can believe another, but if you're transparent, I understand, you understand where I'm coming from. Now at least we can get somewhere.
Well, where does Roy think Monahan went wrong? What word did you just use? Roy was loyal. Monahan wasn't very transparent.
No. It's because he did not consult anyone with the decision.
So, and Monahan may tell you he doesn't have to. Now, no, listen.
and as a player, I'd say, let's see who has the power here. Is it you, or is it us?
Full disclosure, this is a living example of what I kind of just went through. Right? You're thinking about doing lots of other things. There's lots of things on the table, right? At some point, you better be somewhat right when you talk about the whole willing to put that to the test, because you can say, and what I like to say is, you can do that as part of the administration or the brass or the boss or whatever. But in the back of my mind, I always say to myself, at what cost? It sounds good because you can understand how the pecking order works. Sure, you can do that. You run the show. You can say that. You run the show. But at what cost? Right? Like, just because you can doesn't mean you should. If you want to go super biblical, which I often do, all is permissible, but all is not edifying or beneficial.
But sometimes you might want to, move something forward without consulting, because
absolutely,
because that if you consult, it may not get done in a timely manner.
But sometimes that's okay,
and it may not get done at all.
What did we just say? I think this was a spirited conversation off air. I don't know if this was on air or off air. This was like, 12 o'clock. We're in here going back and forth, and we arrived. I can't remember what we were talking about. I think it was either contracts or something, and it was, or maybe it was John Morant. And I said, imagine if nobody takes control in a position of leadership, and you're trying to arrive at a round table discussion. You'll never land the plane.
Exactly.
Somebody has to make the decision. however that totem, somebody has to make the decision, because not everybody can have their needs met. But when you bring everybody to the table.
To your point, Shane, you don't have to land the plane in one sitting, one meeting.
In one day.
This is a conversation that probably would have taken at least a couple of months to get people on board. And if once you get one person on board, then the trickle-down effect starts to take place. So, it's kind of, what's that movie? What was that? It's an old movie, black and white film, where they're in, it's like a jury room. And
12 Angry Men.
12 Angry Men. Yes.
12 Angry Men. Yes. It's kind of like that, right? You have a whole group of people that think one thing, and say Jay Monahan's the one that says, I vote not guilty. And, okay, now start making your points. And if he starts making good enough points, you'll probably get somebody else on board with your points. And now you have 2 against, in this case, 10. And then you'll probably have one guy that is dead set in his ways. That's yes, guilty. But you could probably get him to turn around once you start picking up steam with the other team. So that's why it takes some time to do this. You don't just do it.
Did the decision need to be made yesterday?
No. Absolutely not. Golf's a year-round sport. Doesn't matter when that decision is made.
I wish I was handicapped with the fact. I got to stop. I wish I had more information on when the idea was floated, because I just get the sense you don't just wake up and make this decision. Right?
No, I mean, this was thought about over time.
So,
him and a few other people were talking.
And you have to know the ramifications. You're willing to roll the dice.
And he gambled. He gambled, and I don't know if that gamble was worth the risk.
So what are they now? So what are they going to end up doing? Not playing on tour?
In regards to
what, like
just altogether?
Yeah. So you've got to so the golfers have to operate under good faith that that the PGA is still going to be the controlling entity, which is basically
seems
if you read the letter, right?
Yeah.
Hey, the PGA will still be in control. We just get the money first. You'll get access to our product, in essence, the players. We'll figure out how to do this whole team's, because it read.
You're probably going to need more team play because that's what the LIV was about.
Okay, so do you have enough? Do you have enough muscle inventory, if you will? Because it's all about the inventory. Does somebody have the inventory that I want, and are they willing to pay me for it? Right, that's business 101. Where I feel like I can still have the stroke, right? My TV partners. What will my TV partners say? What will how does the marketability work? Do I have enough of what you want if you're going to give me the money where I can still have the stroke? And because it's not just about having the money. Because rich people typically aren't rich by just giving it away all willy-nilly. And for as much money as we think the Saudis had, they apparently weren't all that happy about just throwing it away. Because why else do you try to form the partnership? There's something on this end of the business table that they won.
Yeah.
Right. So what is that? That's what I want to know. I want to know those details.
That's interesting. You know what every golfer should have to do that was playing on the LIV? They should have to earn, when they're going to earn their PGA card next year, they should have to play on the Korn Ferry Tour. They should have to go back through the system. And selfishly,
it seems punitive.
Selfishly, we'd get them in Omaha.
Your desired outcome.
We'd get the PBC with Brooks Koepka. We'll be back.
Rogers and Benning will be back in 5 minutes.
Rogers and Benning will be back in 4 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 3 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 2 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 1 minute. Rogers and Benning will be back in 30 seconds. Coffee and Cream with Rogers and Benning on Hail Varsity Radio.
Fact of the matter is that this was a shock to a lot of people because we were not in a position to share or explain as we normally would. And that was really a result of the commitment we had made to maintaining confidentiality through the end.
Yeah, you were very confidential, I'll tell you that much.
Yeah. Hey, now that you know that, does that make you feel any better?
No,
but it's like, well, at least he said it, right? I mean, he's opened himself up.
I guess own the results, right? We talk about that a lot. Just own it. I'm still on board with them coming to play in the Pinnacle Bank Championship for their PGA card.
It seems kind of punitive.
Koepka, Mickelson, DeChambeau. Let's get them all out here.
Does that get you your desired outcome?
No, but that selfishly gets me a reason to watch.
Selfish.
Let's go to the phone. Ravi on line one here to talk about exactly what we opened with. Yeah, I'm excited to hear from him. Ravi, good morning. Hopefully you are feeling better, and let's talk PGA.
What's going on, guys? Yeah, I'm feeling pretty good. How are you guys doing this morning?
Good, man.
We're on one.
How's the man with 3 L's?
I'm doing all right. I mistimed my pain medication a little bit, so I'm up a little early today.
Are you like, I don't feel so good?
Well, it's like one of those things where like I feel okay, but I try and time it with like my sleep schedule a little bit because that stuff just kind of knocked me out. And I took a little too early last night. So morning.
What's on your mind, big fella?
Well, okay, so you guys are talking about the whole PGA Live thing, and a lot of it's optics, right? A lot of it's kind of the perception of how everything went down.
Yeah. And remember, optics is just a word we use when we don't have enough information.
100%. So let me play devil's advocate here a little bit, because it sounded like, and correct me if I'm wrong, at least Andrew was kind of advocating for, maybe having more discussions, drawing the process out a little bit to kind of get everybody on board. Is that a fair characterization?
Yeah.
So let me ask this, just playing the other side of the coin here. And I don't,
Are you Ravi Monahan?
Yeah. So yeah, we'll say I'm his brother-in-law or something.
Timmy Monahan.
So
you can't have a brother-in-law named Ravi.
We could.
with an entity as toxic as Live, right, and the whole Saudi sports watching thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's a pretty toxic wasteland of things right there. If you know you're gonna make a deal with them sooner or later, is there any value to kind of just ripping the Band-Aid, right? Because let's think about the way we cover sports in this country, especially in approaching the middle of June, where there's not a whole lot going on, except for here in Omaha, Nebraska, where we got the College World Series. But on a national landscape, you don't have a ton of stories. So let's say Monahan and Liv are going back and forth. That's going to get out, right? So do you really want Stephen A. Smith and SportsCenter and all these people talking for 2 months about how you're about to make a deal with the devil? Or do you just want to rip the Band-Aid and let people get used to it and kind of just let it play itself out? I think there might be some value if you know you're doing a deal regardless.
So I get what you're saying. DB had said it too. When you look at
don't go dragging me.
when you look at we talked about how this deal just didn't happen overnight. So obviously it was they did a very good job of keeping it secret. So they could have too if they, bleed in some players here to advocate for the players. But in the same light, I still looking at it from the players' point of view, you could get them on board if you said, hey, this is going to happen, whether you guys like it or not, whether we rip the Band-Aid off or whether we prolong this. And the players could then come back with, well, how do I get something out of this? Because they were the ones that had to forego a ton of money to stay loyal. So where can we see benefit from them? So you probably could have gotten to some calmer waves, some patches of water where people were like, okay, I feel good about this, instead of just resting in the storms, in the choppiness of what we just had to see yesterday. But don't get me wrong, I see where you're coming from. There's just so many other things that could go into this that could ease the pain a little bit.
So wait, so along the analogy though of the devil's advocate, so are you you're basically saying the lesser of two evils, right? Smoothing over the players and them being disgruntled, going back and asking for forgiveness as opposed to, permission, versus mulling through a month, 6 weeks of what you described earlier with talking heads, right? That's basically the risk reward he's got away. Can I get back right with the players? You know what he's probably thinking? And I don't know this, I'm speculating. Just the injury, just the sound bites and the letters, they're so cringy with Monahan. I think he's thinking, just wait till you get compensated. You'll be okay. But I think the players are saying, here's where the disjoint is. The players are like, we could have got the money all along. We didn't have to go through you.
Mm-hmm.
Right, but they have to go through someone, right? They have for professional golfers, there's not like a ton of options. LIV was the second option, but if you didn't go to LIV, you had to be with the PGA.
Mm-hmm.
Now that LIV has gone away, if you want to make a living playing golf, you have to be with the PGA. So the players are kind of over a barrel here. Like, they don't have a ton of options if they want to continue playing professional golf. So it's a lot easier to ask forgiveness of the players than it is to have your organization dragged for 2 months on national media. You get what I mean? Like, the players are going to continue to play for the most part. Maybe a couple quit, but let's be realistic here. Like, NBA players still go to China. Like, whatever their personal beliefs are, they still get on that plane and go sell shoes over there every preseason, or, most preseasons. Like, once the players understand they don't have other options, then they're going to cash the checks, because that's all.
I mean, we did just play the World Cup in Qatar.
That's what I'm saying. That's the nature of sports, and we don't like to think about it like that, because people like us especially have this more idealized view of what sports can and should be, and at amateur, quote unquote amateur levels that aren't always so amateur anymore,
mm-hmm.
It can be closer to that. But when you get to the professional stuff, you're talking about pure capitalism earlier.
Mm-hmm.
That's exactly what it is.
Yeah,
and make the bottom line decision and understanding, and businesses do this all the time, by the way, non-sports businesses, understanding your employees may or may not have a better option. Well, the sports leagues know they don't have a better option. There is no other option.
Mm-hmm. Although, you know what would be interesting? I don't know how feasible this is, because I don't know individual worth outside of maybe Tiger Woods, and we can only speculate. What if, there were a couple of powers that be that were willing, if this was really about principle? Hey, man, it's the principle of the matter. Where there was a set aside for these 300 guys on the PGA Tour, you pool about, let's say it's 10 mil, 15 mil, right? 15 mil. One endorsement for Tiger. Out of the goodness of his heart, he puts it in a pool or, a warehouse where guys could function for a year. May have to, take some shortcuts and cut out some things. And you just don't play. Their version of striking.
Sure. How many guys do you have to get to do that, though?
Yeah, so I just think about that stuff out loud. Right, because it's always every time this happens in sports,
you just need the big names to do it.
A certain amount of people chime up, and I always want to say, "Hey, listen, man, if that's your moral ground, if that's your principle, put up some of your money, let them chill for a year, and send the message." Otherwise, it's why people were mad at LeBron, right? Okay, stop dealing with China. If you stop dealing with China, pony up some of the money. We'll sit out. And we'll see what happens with sponsorships and inventory. If somebody was willing to do that once or twice and take one step back to take a couple steps forward, I just don't know if you're going to have movement, because otherwise you're just talking, right? We didn't like it, and we gave it a stupid term like woke, which people misuse because they're uneducated. But we saw a guy do it, and it cost him his career, basically. Until he decided he did or kind of didn't want to play. I don't know what Kaepernick was doing, but we see what happens when people stand on principle. I don't know, man. Sometimes you're left holding the bag, but I think you got to be willing to do it at least once or twice on a power level.
Right. Golf a little different, though.
I don't know. Maybe.
The problem is that you need
get on your Corn Ferry tour.
You think you do to reach a critical mass.
Yeah, you're probably right. I'm with that. Business 101.
Ravi, appreciate the call, man.
You guys.
It's a lot in there.
Yeah, but still, golf being so individualizally, it's different. And when you have the best players doing it, right? But when you have the best players doing it, you can get away with the principle.
Okay. You want to expound?
We'll be back.
Rogers and Benning will be back in 4 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 3 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 2 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 1 minute. Rogers and Benning will be back in 30 seconds. Coffee and Cream with Rogers and Benning on Hail Varsity Radio.
We're going to continue to do all the things that we do for impacting lives and impacting communities through our tournaments. But by being able to create a for-profit LLC, we've been handicapped. We're a pass-through organization. We've not been able to reinvest our dollars in growth businesses. And now this gives us the opportunity to do that.
Wait, are we talking about transparency? Are you telling us what we needed to know, what we needed to hear? Still would have been nice to have that conversation before.
Yeah. As we are. So what's happened here is now we're getting into life, right? Plenty of spirited conversations off air, on air. We got a little Shane over here. We're live from H&H Chevrolet Studios. My main man, Brian Christopherson, at 8 o'clock. Mike J. Schaefer stops in. How about that?
Yeah, I'm excited for that.
To see Schaefer in person.
Mm-hmm.
Schaefer's a good,
I've only seen him one time.
He's a good man. So he'll be here at 8:30 before he goes to 7-on-7. Again, a guy that actually likes to put eyes on things and kind of be in the weeds, which is why I like him. And AK for Channel 7. But you know what? So when we have these conversations, right? Then you talk about transparency.
And you talk about principle, which got me on something else.
Because I know you're very principled,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like there are certain things, there are hills that I know you'll go lay down, maybe not flatline, but you'll take a good long Rip Van Winkle.
Yeah, I'd say you can resuscitate me.
Yeah,
but
right.
It's gonna be a little while.
So and I think a lot of this, like just on a personal basis, like I can always bring this back to home to me to let you guys in on, and gals, why I think the way that I do. See, the whole value versus worth thing. I'm going through this right now with Playfly, right? The media partner for the network, right? And the value for me is my time, right? Because I coach and I need to be around kids, right? That is
a non-negotiable.
It is a non-negotiable. Now, I say that until I have to look at hard figures. Then it will test my conviction or the principle of the matter, right? Because you have to be willing for somebody to tell you that you're not worth what you think you are in negotiations. That's always the hard part. You know, so let's say, hey, listen, you know, I've got a conflict here and I have one other conflict here. We got to figure out the travel to and from. How much is this worth to you to figure out if you want a long-term deal, right? Am I that good? Am I not good? You know what I mean? So in order to have those productive conversations to move the ball forward, you always have to be willing to have somebody tell you, or be willing, because I don't really know yet how it's going to go. Because I mean, we've been at this for a little bit, right? It's like, okay, I can't wait to see how this actually plays out, because then I'll know if you think I'm as good as not only I think I am, but apparently other
right.
Your numbers show that people think I am, right? So I think with the golfers, when you talk about it only taking the big ones, well, you have to be willing to put that to the test.
Right.
Well,
and that's why when you brought up the whole Tiger Woods example of putting $15 million aside going on strike.
Yeah, that maybe is low. I don't know what the number is.
But even if that was like just what it ended up being, like how many people do you know out there that watch golf on the regular when the big names aren't in? How many people do you know watch golf when it's not a major championship? Right? Very few.
Yeah.
Very few people will sit and actually watch the sport. Now, you may have it on as background noise. Now, you may turn it on for a little bit and then wait until the sporting event of your choosing turns on, because golf comes on so early. But majority of the time, if the big names aren't there, you're not going to get the viewership that you want. So in regards to going back and being principled in me, knowing what I believe, knowing what I'd stand up for, assuming the players, based on everything I saw yesterday, would probably do the same thing, they'd be willing to say, and unless you have conversations with me, if you go on and make a decision like this, I know how I can damage you. Now, that would also damage their own reputation, but it also could get a lot of people to stand by and say, no, I kind of like what you're doing, because they didn't handle this. They didn't handle this well with a big group of people, with 200 plus people that decided to stay loyal to you throughout this whole process. So going back and just to the whole transparency point, if you would have even just had one conversation and then made this happen, people out there would probably say, well, you know, at least they told you they were going to do it. Whether you liked it or not, you have to remember that it's a business. This conversation would be completely different if they met with just a few golfers, a few of the big names, who then said, hey, go talk to your people. Like, go talk to the other guys. We can do it ourselves, but it may be better coming from you.
Shane, do me a favor. Find that clip you just played about what they couldn't do with their resources up until now. So while we're by Shane some time here,
the one I just played coming out.
Mm-hmm.
I got it for you.
So if they have this conversation right here, let's say a month ago, Shane,
we're going to continue to do all the things that we do for impacting lives and impacting communities through our tournaments. But by being able to create a for-profit LLC, we've been handicapped. We're a pass-through organization. We've not been able to reinvest our dollars in growth businesses. And now this gives us the opportunity to do that.
So do you think if people knew that they were operating as, in essence, a 501c3, a non-profit? Because I think we sometimes look at business entities as like this money-making conglomerate. Like, I don't know the real numbers behind what the NCAA was making. I know what Emirates was making. I knew his salary, and you're like, well, wait a minute, that doesn't register as a nonprofit, right? Like, there seems to be this disconnect between what we think a 501c3 means in terms of designated status and the ability to pay employees, because there are lots of people that run nonprofit organizations that take 15, 20 cents on the dollar. Now, really, really good ones can privately raise those kinds of monies, then say, hey, listen, 100% of your dollar goes to, right? But when I was overseeing Bud's nonprofit organization, I was paid a compensation, right? So we would always have these conversations on, okay, how much is robbing from Peter to pay Paul versus if this is what you believe in, this is what we're going to do. So then immediately I get into this value versus worth thing. And I'm like, okay, well, here, these are the things that I'm willing to do, and that won't take, you know what I mean? This is what you're willing to go fundraise for. So those kinds of things, if they know ahead of time, you think would alleviate some of the blowback?
I do. And my follow-up
I'm not disagreeing. I'm further gathering info.
And my follow-up would be, how are you going to respond to the players that did leave? Like, when they come back, are they going to be fined? Are they going to have their status stripped? Are they going to be suspended for X amount of years? And how are you compensating me for staying close, whether it's with money or it's with some other thing?
Okay, let me ask you something. Are you, typically speaking, is your personality, are you a pound of flesh kind of guy? Do you need a pound of flesh in order to feel?
No, because life's not fair.
Okay.
Life is not fair.
Okay.
But it doesn't mean I can't ask the question.
Okay.
And that's kind of where I'm at with this. You be transparent with me. I can ask a question back. If you give me some type of information and I mull on that for a little bit and then come back with different numbers.
If the guys because I saw this a lot yesterday. It was, oh man, Greg Norman just, for a crass term, just Shane, can I say the thing that, like, when you can serve it hot or cold and you put it in the drink and you kind of dip it in and out and then the water.
I believe some people call that tea.
Yeah. So
a tea pouch.
So, oh man, Greg Norman did this, or the golfers that went to live did this, and it's so they make it like on a personal level that, ooh, they got you. Ooh, they got you. They like, but would you feel better if they went and did their thing and you actually understood that in a capitalism format, they went and tried to make as much money as they could, but now PGA in turn is now being compensated for them making that move? Could you rationalize it without needing your pound of flesh and saying, ooh, they got you,
I think it's this. Do you like, based on everything that you just said, I think it's this.
And I'm not saying I'm right. I'm sparking
you're
the
making
thought.
me think, though. I can't trust you. Like, Monahan, as a player, I can't trust you.
Are you go in knowing that?
Yeah, but you're not for me anymore. Like, you were once for me. You did stand by the tour. You did stand by the players on the tour. But now you're going with, hey, I got to make a business decision. So you went.
But what if I take care of you, though?
See, if you take care of me, then it's
Don't you
it's a
think
whole
the
different story.
sponsorships have to
Because
change? And listen,
like I said, you're compensating me in some way for staying loyal to you. You're still coming back to me, and you're making a business decision for the tour. You're making a business decision for us that stood by you.
Because I just don't and this is just me, I don't love the term optics because I think it's a cop-out when we make uninformed opinions or decisions. We just don't know enough.
Mm-hmm.
But it doesn't keep you from speaking real time and saying, oh, man, hey, you know what? The optics don't look good.
Right.
But I'm always a little leery because I just think that there's things that I'm not privy to. But I can still speak on it in the moment, right? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I get it.
Brian Christopherson, Mike Schaefer, back-to-back, next.
Rogers and Benning will be back in 4 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 3 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 2 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 1 minute. Rogers and Benning will be back in 30 seconds. Coffee and Cream with Rogers and Benning on Hail Varsity Radio. Here is Husker 24/7 senior writer, Brian Christopherson.
Yeah, it'll be a little bit of a circus act.
Brian Christopherson.
Well, I mean, that's pretty interesting.
Brian Christopherson.
I kind of enjoy that.
Here is Brian Christopherson.
Hey, top of the hour here on Coffee and Cream in the Morning on Hail Varsity Radio, powered by Currency. Damon Benning, Andrew Rogers spoke a lot about the merger between the PGA and the LIV to open up the show. We'll change gears now and talk to Brian Christopherson, senior writer for Husker 24/7 at Husker247BC on Twitter. BC, good morning.
Hi, B.
Hey, guys. How you doing?
Hey, good. I got a quick question before we actually talk football here, because I want to hit on your Twins for a short sec. Probably one of the most slept on stories in sports. Luis Arraez is batting over 400 right now for the Marlins. How much does that hurt your soul?
Yeah, thanks. Good morning to you. I miss Luis a lot. He was a Energizer bunny, and you knew he was going to get on base twice a game. Whether he walked or whatever. So, yeah, it's hard. It's hard without him. And I hope, though, he has a lot of success. He's one of those guys. I think I've said this before. If he were in a Cleveland Guardians uniform, I'd have to probably exit the room, because I have strong enough feelings for Luis Arraez that I wouldn't want to see him strike out necessarily. Yeah, I would, but I'm overdoing it. But I love that guy. So good for him.
Hey, BC, let me stretch you here just for a sec, because we didn't get to it yet because we're busy talking capitalism and principle and money. What was your level of surprise that Jeff Christie was just mutually agreed upon, which I felt like the semantics were interesting there, mutually agreed upon his departure from Nebraska's baseball team? I should say.
Well, I guess I wasn't surprised. My coworker Browns covers him, much closer than I do. And I had heard or thought that could be a possibility. So it didn't stun me. But it was just one of those deals where I'm sure the results weren't satisfactory for either party. I would guess Jeff Christie would say the same thing, And it's one of those deals where you've got to build up that pitching depth, and it's got to be something I feel like that doesn't destroy momentum in the middle of the week. It's easy to sometimes, and I don't think they had this, but you can have this focus on, okay, where are they at in the big standings and all this and that. But if you win 2 out of 3 over the weekend, and then you go lose to UNO or Creighton on Tuesday or Wednesday, I do think that does something to your club, mentally, where you just can't kind of keep that momentum rolling, and then you gotta refine it again the next weekend. So it's going to be huge to find someone who can not only make those top guys shine, but get those 4th, 5th, 6th guys really rolling, where you feel like they've got depth to get a winning streak going in the regular season and to make a run in the tournament when you get to conference play.
It's weird, on the heels of an hour basically of where we talked about worth, value, loyalty, and transparency, and a conversation like this is somebody that's a friend and has been a friend of Coach Bolt. Is it not strange, BC, that we've had these conversations of coaches having to dismiss, fire, get rid of friends on Nebraska's watch? I know it happens all over the place, but even in Coach Bolt's statement, he referenced that, but he kept it pretty linear in terms of, hey man, I understand the history, wish him nothing but the best, you got to move forward. It just seems like we've seen this play out through Nebraska athletics before. I thought it was kind of, it's like Bizarro World yesterday.
It'd be kind of hard. It seems like on the surface it'd be such a great thing to have your best friend or your friends working alongside you. But man, that would be difficult sometimes. And I do think it puts you in a box in certain situations. Doesn't have to, I guess. You need to probably go into that with the parameters well understood. This friendship will always be there. But as you know, as we go along with whatever sport this is that I'm coaching, we've got to have certain results, and we're going to be judged that way, and we're going to make decisions based upon only that. And if both guys can understand that going in, Still not going to make it easier when that day comes. So I wish nothing but the best to Jeff Christie, obviously a Husker in his own right. And, that I'm sure that friendship goes on. But yeah, you're right. It is interesting. We've seen it before. We saw it. I always think of the one with Mike Riley and Mark Banker, where he actually
Cosgrove.
Yeah, and in Banker's case, I think he got fired over the phone, if I remember right.
Yeah.
So it's interesting how some of that stuff comes out sometimes.
Is anything ever mutually agreed upon, like in regards to firing? Like, I know sometimes you could probably get like the circumstance of like, okay, I'm not really feeling it anymore, you're not, but like, especially in sports, is anything ever mutually agreed upon?
I think if the compensation's good.
Yeah,
maybe like a walk out of the door here. Don't let the money bag hurt you as you're walking to your car.
Use both pockets.
I do think there's moments when the coach who gets fired, he just agrees, like, yeah, it's not to a standard which I can hold this job anymore. I think some guys really understand that. Like, there's guys that have definitely covered Husker football that have coached Husker football that I've coached. Eric Chenander used to say it all the time, like, I'm just paying rent over here. It's not like I own this office or anything. I know that I can be scooted out the door tomorrow. So I do think there's an understanding.
Hey, so BC, as we've kind of getting the close and Nebraska's done in Texas and heading back, did you get the sense? Do you understand the difference between like camping and glamping? Like glamping is like, people will tell you they're going camping, but it's really not.
And they're staying in a cabin.
Yeah, they're not like really roughing
That would
it.
be me.
But you get the sense when Nebraska's satellite camp and camping, it's like you may or may not shower. You got to have the the bathroom hookup, the pipes where you can get rid of some sewage. Like it seems like they're actually camping, like on the hunt.
Yeah, a little bit of that, I suppose. When I was camping as a boy, I'd make the mistake of you'd leave the swimming suit in like your little suitcase, and by the fourth day, it was just ridiculously bad. That was when I was like 8, not 17. Some people would probably think the latter, but yeah, I do think there's a little bit of old school technique. I think you see that even in, Matt Rule talking about bringing the guys to Solich Quadrangle, to live.
How about that?
Together and stuff. I mean, stuff like that. That's
why do you pick Solich?
I have a theory, I guess.
Yeah, hit me.
Well, I think Solich, it's just like right in the mid. I think there's such a focus on like you're part of, like, let's understand you're a part of this university. It's bigger than just this team. Like everybody, is connected here. I think there's been a big focus on that. And Solich is right in the middle, it's like right by the student union and stuff like that. Yeah. And it's got a little bit of what you're talking about. I haven't been in Solich in 20 years, but it was known as a little bit more of the old school dorm back in the day. I'm being polite. So I think
traditional.
Yeah. But I think it's like, let's get these guys in a spot where maybe it isn't overly comfortable for a few weeks, sort of like NFL training camps are. I think you're seeing some of that in what you're asking about, that philosophy. Like, we're not just going to make this a bed and breakfast situation for you, and we're going to see how guys respond, and hopefully it brings people closer together.
BC, something I thought about too yesterday after chit-chatting about the team spending fall camp.
Hey, chit-chat.
Yeah, we were just chitting the chat, right? And we were talking about them and fall camp, and it seems like they never want to lose any momentum when it comes to building a winning culture. Do you get the same sense when you see moves like staying in Solich for the fall made, essentially?
Yeah, well, I go back to the media session Rule had. It was I think it was a Saturday before the spring game, and it wasn't it's on camera somewhere, but it was like 15 minutes of gold, I thought. And he talked in there about we can't lose momentum. We just can't stop moving forward. This can't be a deal where the spring ends, you're satisfied, you just walk away from it and all that. And so to your question, yes, I think everything is done with the purpose of, okay, what's next? It's not like, okay, that got accomplished on Tuesday. Good for us. Let's pat ourselves on the back. And so definitely that's in their mind. And I don't think that's any leap for me to say it. I think the head coaches express that through, multiple interviews. So definitely it's a part of it. And I think the idea of like, hey, you get the coaches in there with the players too, and they live there for a little bit. And, it adds to that idea. We're going to go through the rough stuff together. It's not going to be a picnic all the time, and we're all part of it.
Hey, so BC, with these new pieces and him putting together kind of this family structure, right? Where you get comfortable being uncomfortable, and it's always just some of the things you just were intimating, right? It's always something. What's next? What's next, right? Let's zero complacency. How important is it? And he said this out loud, right? He doesn't sit in those coordinator meetings, right? He says that's the time he tries to catch up on his reading. He doesn't want to oversee. He wants to empower folks to be, leaders in their own arena. How important is it that he gets good, healthy pushback isn't the word, gets good, healthy dialogue when maybe some things philosophically don't always mesh, right? Because he has to be sharp and stay uncomfortable too. Is that an undersold dynamic for you as you kind of look at this one great big happy family kind of infrastructure?
No. And if I'm understanding it correctly, don't you think that the best head coaches you've been around, yes, they're in charge, but they have that trait that's really important in a person where you can take a tough critique yourself, where like someone can say, what about this? I don't know if we're quite doing that right. And you have a room of coaches, hopefully, and I would think they might, based on how much time they've spent together, where they feel comfortable enough to raise their hand on certain things and say like, no, what about this idea? And there's sort of an open dialogue there. Everybody knows who's in charge, of course, at the end of the day, and who makes the final decision. But I do think as a head coach or any leader of any organization, I think it's critical that you have that ability to take in the information from your coaches. Okay, what about this direction? Maybe we should shift this a little bit. And
on the heels of Liv and DJ, I find this fascinating.
Yeah. I know you guys covered that.
Isn't it interesting though? Because the things that I think we like and we gravitate towards in terms of, hey, it's cool to say out loud, I like constructive criticism and I need the feedback. Sometimes I think we're a little reluctant and afraid to know what comes with that.
Oh yeah, some people can't
on both ends, right? On both ends, because it comes down to really based on that point, BC, trust. Like you have to have good trust within your group in order to actually say something to the head coach.
That's probably
because a lot of times you may not want to be the guy that stands up and like says, "Hey, there's a better way to do this," to the guy that is your boss, your leader.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I don't know how much that goes on or needs to go on over there. And I don't know if I even took Damon's question the right direction.
Well, absolutely.
I do think that is a critical component in any organization that there's that back and forth dialogue. There's an understanding of who's who and whose office is a little bigger. And sometimes you got to keep your mouth shut. But I think it's important that you have what Andrew's talking about is that trust. And it isn't easy probably if you're a position coach sometimes to interject something. But if you get that type of family feel where you don't feel like the third cousin, you feel like you're really part of things, that can be pretty special. And I think this all goes back to how this conversation started about just that idea of building family within your coaching staff, within your coaches' players, where you understand the dynamics of who's who. But there's also a trust that you can have very real conversations with each other.
Yeah, it's interesting. Because we were talking about coaches, and I know, and there's some infamous or famous, whichever word, discussions between Coach McBride and Coach Osborne, right, about the evolution of that defense. I remember Vic Fangio and Dom Capers, and Joe Pendry, for that matter, the OC in Carolina when I was there, where I think Andrew's onto something with the whole trust thing, where you probably should know that ahead of time when you bring guys on your staff, that both parties have to feel like they're empowered to do so. And I go back to a practice, BC, and you saw some at the very beginning, right, where you watch Coach Rule and how involved he is in kind of how he goes about his business. And I watched him watch that defense, and he legitimately seemed to take a learning posture, even though he is the CEO of that organization. That right there is like the epitome of trust, right?
Yeah, and hiring Tony White just off the bat.
Let's get to the at the very beginning.
Well, I mean, the resume is nice, so that it makes sense, but that's the one. I mean, that you could make the argument that was the biggest hire he made, right? You know, your defensive coordinator, and what's that going to look like? We've seen defensive coordinators at this school. This is all tying together. We've seen them untie head coaches before here, where it just hasn't worked, and so that guy has to be on point. And obviously, he knew White through some they had conversations over the years, but he wasn't like in that family that we're speaking about until just now. And he trusted that Tony White was the type of guy who would adapt to the way things are done in his organization, but also to give him the freedom to run it his way. And it feels like that's what's been in place so far, and that's probably what you're seeing at the practices we've been able to view. I also would note that, and I don't think this is speaking out of school, he a few times we were over there, he wasn't afraid to just let another coach have it a little bit.
Oh yeah,
and that would be a coach. These are coaches he are beloved by him. I'm talking his main guys. So, and those guys totally like, they get it, they move on to their next drill, and they're like, yeah, that wasn't up to snuff. I gotta step it up here. So that comes with that family relationship. You have to, where that stuff doesn't get in the way, but it's seen as constructive.
I'm
done. Let's go.
It's interesting just to listen to you talk, because I think about all the monikers that happen. Run the damn ball guy, run the ball, play offense like this. I thought you were supposed to be an offensive this, that. We heard it with Riley. We heard it with Frost. And I asked you last week and the week before in a different vein, like, I think the black shirt thing is something that is super important to Coach Rule to bring that back first, because let's just go through the laundry list of the Cosgroves. You talked about getting fired over the phone, the Chenanders, the Almatians, the Papuch. Well, whose defense is it? Is this Bo's defense or is this Papuch? Of all the hand-wringing and consternation that we've had over defensive guys, why we don't focus more on defense as an identity at the university. It's the one constant brand that we still have, and that's the black shirts, right? But we talk about offensive identity and spread, and hopefully the Big Ten has to adjust to us, and Riley with West Coast, and blending in Armstrong and quarterback run game. Like, isn't that weird?
Yeah, it's also, I would argue, the most portable thing in sports is a good defense in football. Like, people can talk about take their shots at Iowa, but when Iowa goes to play anywhere on a Saturday in October, I expect they're going to be in the game usually because of that defense.
Minnesota, Illinois.
Yeah. And with Nebraska, that's where Nebraska hasn't had that stable setup where you never know quite what's going to happen. They've done pretty good the last couple of years about the games being close, and I know that close is a bad word, but there was a time where you just felt like this could go way off the rails because you just didn't have any trust in that defense, and you didn't sense necessarily. I thought there was some good relationships with Chenander and some of the players, but there's been other times where you didn't know if the defenders and the D coordinator, they were exactly on the same page. And the one thing that's been encouraging early that I've heard, and I've heard this more from recruits, is several have went out of their way unsolicited to say how main thing they noticed was when Tony White was talking to his guys, it was just like he had their full attention. I mean, just like the full respect of everybody's sort of on board and following what this guy is saying and tracking with him. So I thought that was interesting that 17-year-old high school guys who are visiting or have brought that up several times, which I haven't heard necessarily in the past, about just that they see how tight Tony White has been able to make that room and how closely he's been able to make them listen in probably a short amount of time. Now we'll see what the results are, but that's a good step.
BC, along the same lines, but looking at the offense now, because I got into a conversation with a buddy over the weekend who was asking me, like, essentially, where's Coach Satterfield been? He hasn't seen enough of him, not just on social media, but just in general. He wanted to, because, we talk a lot about how, interesting this offense is going to look this year and what he can bring and the different looks. And then you just don't really get to see the guys. So, and we asked a similar question to Vogel yesterday. So I'm going to spin the question a different way for you, just in regards to how valuable it is for the fan base to see these coaches out and about again during camp season, especially when we talk about not seeing certain staff members.
Yeah, I think that matters. Now, I would caution people with that sometimes. The way news gets put out sometimes, it's just like I think Tony White has a specific draw about him. I've spoken about this before because of his scheme, the 3-3-5. People are just kind of, what's that all about? They're trying to get their head around it. And he was the outside the family hire, so to speak. And so I think media probably has written more about Tony White. Probably on radio shows, he just comes up more than Satterfield. And so I think it's as much on just like what we choose to write or talk about as like the actions of that specific coach, if that makes sense. It's not that I think like Tony White's like out there more in the public than Marcus Satterfield necessarily. I'm sure Satterfield's in the lab with his QBs and stuff, whatever he can do, game planning with his guys, trying to figure out the best stuff. And, same thing Tony White's doing. So I think they're probably in the same boat. So I would just tell people to be a little bit careful with that. But yeah, the OC here is always that, in this, at this place where football is focused upon as such, you've got to be a guy with some answers when we get into the serious stuff here as we work into fall camp, and people are going to want to hear what your opinion is on things. It's just the way it goes. They feel so connected to this football team, the fan base. They love to, I think, like tell me what went good, what went wrong. And that's why I think I hope this would be one plea. I hope the coordinators come back to post-game interviews after games on Saturday. That's one media plea, because I think it's valuable when you can hear sometimes from like the Marcus Satterfield or whoever the coordinator was, what happened on that specific play, instead of everybody just taking a guess at it and letting it float in the wind for the week.
You're constantly sparking thought. You know what? I'm listening, right? Listening to understand as opposed to reply, right? It's different for me this time. BC, you know what I think it is? I think it's the fact we think Rule can help out with Satterfield and Raiola, and he's empowered McGuire. We know he's behind him. And I think we subconsciously, we think he's still trying to learn the 3-3-5. So we don't think... So there's more pressure on White. We think Rule can maybe compensate on offense, but White's kind of his own standalone on defense. Subconsciously, that's kind of what I'm thinking as I'm listening to you talk.
No, I think that's probably true. And yeah, to summarize, I just think sometimes it's where the media takes it. It's like with players. Sometimes we'll get focused on like AJ Rollins. We talked so much in the spring about AJ Rollins for good reason, but we a little bit lost sight of Brody Tagovailoa. Actually, was having as good a spring on the D line and might play as much or more right off the bat. And so that's what I'm talking about. Sometimes there's just a storyline that takes off and it goes, 3 cities away. Well, this other guy has just as an interesting a story, but nobody's telling it.
Good points, BC. Thanks for your time.
Thanks, B.
Thanks, guys.
Mike Schaefer up next.
Rogers and Benning will be back in 5 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 4 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 3 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 2 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 1 minute. Rogers and Benning will be back in 30 seconds. Coffee and Cream with Rogers and Benning on Hail Varsity Radio, covering Nebraska football and recruiting for 24/7 Sports. Here is Mike J. Schaefer.
Yeah, that's a grown-ass man right there.
Mike Schaefer.
I don't know. There could be bacon involved.
Mike Schaefer.
Appreciate it, guys. Thank Brian Edwards for me.
Here is Mike Schaefer.
Hey, welcome back. Coffee and Cream in the morning on Hail Varsity Radio, powered by Currency. Damon Benning, Andrew Rogers joining us now in studio. Mike Schaefer, live from Hail Varsity Club, word to the people, Nebraska football and recruiting for 24/7 Sports. At Mike J. Schaefer on Twitter.
I'm so disappointed.
Did I comment on the trim last week? I can't do it again.
Hey,
he did.
I
Yeah,
think
you
I
weren't
did.
in.
Full disclosure, before we make small talk, do you have to be on time?
What do you mean?
Because I'd like to keep you part of the second segment.
I just looked. It's basically 20 minutes to where I need to go. So I probably need to be out of here by 8:50 at the latest.
All right, so we can get him a couple minutes to.
Okay.
Plus, they got to get warmed up anyway.
Okay.
They gotta get. Yeah, it's like a movie, right?
And believe me,
It's
by the
15 minutes of
time
previews.
Wisdom and Huffman get done throwing barbs at each other, it still won't have started.
Okay, all right.
Don't worry. You look fantastic though with the shave.
Thank you. Yeah. As I explained last week, it had been probably a couple years since my chin has felt this much air on it.
Yeah.
And the skin underneath was getting pretty bad. So needed to hydrate it a little bit.
Did you say hair or air?
Air.
Air. Okay.
My chin has had plenty of hair.
Making
It
sure.
needed more air.
Yeah. Okay. I'm with you.
Yeah.
I'm with you.
So you, I'm a little disappointed, although I get it. Right?
Trust me, I don't love it. I'd rather it be longer.
No, not the beard dingling.
I assume that's what we were talking
Your
about.
choice.
That's why I thought you were
the whole
segment.
Just so we could see the beard.
Your choice of 7-on-7. No, it will be a good one though. But what do you? Because I had a couple guys, Aaron Sim, one of my buddies, longtime buddy. I actually met him on a message board. He's turned out to be a really good friend. His son Gavin. They're coming up. They're in Lincoln. They're coming up for their version of 7-on-7. So we had a lot of questions last night about, because I think Gavin is 27, maybe he's 26 or 27. Gonna be
make him a freshman.
Gonna be a good. Yeah,
gonna
gonna be. No, he's just a freshman, so he thinks he's 2027. Is that right? Yeah.
Yes,
Yes. Yeah. Because
so he's 8th grader. He's gonna be.
Could get some reps. But anyway, I say all that to say he was asking about the format because, he wants to be able to get some value out of it, know what he's doing. He's been in all these other 7-on-7s around the country with his 7-on-7 group. Do you you obviously like it because you can get a good evaluation, but how useful is it for you when you're seeing what you see?
Well, let's start with this. The reason I show up at events, first and foremost, is to be able to talk to people. So it starts there, because one of the reasons I'll go to Bell West, I can knock out quick interviews with Daniel Kalen, Isaiah McMorris, Davon Hall, and it's easier to do that than to just try to get them on the phone or slide into DMs or whatever it has to be to try to get
sliding into DMs.
Yeah, nobody wants that. Nobody wants me in their DMs. So it's a situation where, first and foremost, I'm going there to get information. The easiest way to get the information is to get it as direct as possible, so to talk to them. And so,
even if you have to drive from Beatrice?
Yeah, because last week, for instance, I show up at Westside, and they're just inside for the first 45 minutes. So it's just me standing out there watching some people run around the track.
They didn't let you in? I told them to buzz you in.
They could have. I mean, I watched them come out, but I didn't need any. They're working out. They're just conditioning. I'm not going to gain a lot out of that anyways. But then, it was great for me to be there last week because I could talk to Preston Okafor and I could talk to Keenan Cotton. I think I was saying that wrong.
It is Keenan.
Yeah, Keenan Cotton. And, people that I haven't talked to before. And then, of course, I get to talk with Christian Jones. I get to talk with, Caleb. I get to talk with the Rezaks. Then you can get a lot out of it versus, chasing down one person for a phone call could take a long time. You just show up somewhere and they're all
they're going to be there.
So it starts with that. And the rest of it is as much as I can make out of it as I can. If it's 7-on-7 last year, there was some weeks where I would go to passing league and I really, other than the interview, I wasn't getting much out of it because the team that they're going against is not.
This will be highly competitive this week.
Yeah, well, I haven't seen Millard South.
I think they're flying
under South since,
I think they're flying under the radar.
21. So
I've been saying this for months, right?
Yep.
I feel like their recruiting profile is underappreciated.
Yeah.
They have a lot
I was told they have a very good wide receiver.
That's Jackson.
Yeah. So
good player. He actually, and he's a worker too. You know what I like? So about 3 weeks ago, ETG, the basketball team was off, and Caleb, those guys, they went and got him, a couple of other guys. They had their own workout up at the school, and he comes with enough respect.
Yep.
Like they wanted him on they wanted him on board to get working, deal. Right? Like he's a good young player. He can wait till you see how he can high point a ball.
Okay. Yeah.
They have to start over at quarterback. Not start over, but obviously when you lose Cam, That's a big deal at Miller South. But Wisdom and Huffman are virtually the same person. You watch. Wisdom will take a back seat to no one.
Is this area ready for two coaches like Huffman?
Trust me when
I say that with love. I obviously get along.
Wisdom will take a back seat to no one. He put his staff in all black last year. They like being the villain. Like, Wisdom is that dude.
All right. I haven't met him either, so this is an opportunity too. I mean, part of again showing up at stuff is
I like
me
JR.
to be there to talk to people, but also, you know, it was fun for me last week. Lamanji's just in the middle of the field, and he just turns and he's, how great is this? You know, he was in a great mood.
Dude, he is,
because his team is out there working, and
he's
it's
unbelievable.
May, and you know, he was excited about it.
He's so pissy. It's not even funny. He just dude's ready.
Hey, speaking of high school coaches, because you tweeted out over the weekend about how recruits talk about this Nebraska staff and especially Rule, but what are the impressions you get from high school coaches in the area about Nebraska's staff and especially Coach Rule?
I think they, you know, in Lincoln, I think there's been an appreciation of guys stopping by high schools that generally haven't had coaches come by. You know, I know outstate people were excited about Ed Foley stopping by. Again, same thing. Somebody went up to Columbus Lakeview for the first time in years. Like, it's just, there's an appreciation of having the in-state school, even if there's not necessarily a recruit. And obviously at Lakeview, they have a kid walking on that's going to be really interesting. You know, even if there's not necessarily a recruit that's going to help the program, feeling like you're part of something is valuable, and making people feel that way is something that the staff has certainly done more than maybe the other staffs. But for the most part, I mean, you know, the guys that you're going to end up talking to about this, like the Coach Huffmans of the world and Lamanji, they've dealt with Pelini, they dealt with Riley, they dealt with Frost. They, you know, they're seeing the coaches all the time. So their comments are largely going to be the same. I mean, there might be some transition in there where I know there's been different assistant coaches coming to Omaha, which was an issue, I think, recently, where you got the same coach showing up all the time, and that coach doesn't necessarily mesh well with the kids he's trying to recruit, you know, and we talked about it.
I love you, Mike J.
But I'm just saying, we've talked about this almost to the point where no one wants to hear it anymore, but Nebraska has to treat recruiting Nebraska like it did Miami and St. Louis and everywhere else, where you're sending all hands on deck because you're trying to match personalities with the people that you're recruiting. You're trying to make people feel like they matter, that it matters to come to Nebraska, and that it's not just an assumption that because you live here that you're going to go play for Nebraska. I mean, first of all, no program should assume that ever. And second of all, a program that isn't winning games and these kids haven't seen them win games shouldn't just assume that everyone's just lining up to put on a Nebraska.
You said something that I think it's going to fly under the radar because you said it with a bunch of other things. But you know what's the most important thing you just said?
No.
You have to match personalities with.
Okay, yeah.
See, people don't catch
Sending the right guy.
Yeah, people don't catch that.
Well,
it absolutely matters here locally, because what's the natural inclination of young people? You compare and contrast. You don't even get into like substance. Like you compare and contrast how something made you feel, or the immediacy of it. So that right there is a sneaky, underappreciated thing. You have to match wits with who other people are sending.
And it just also can't just be that's our area recruiter. I think that style of recruiting is being phased out everywhere, not just Nebraska. Like it has to matter to the individual. If it's December or May and a coach is in their school and they're going to get pulled out of class for a bump or whatever it's going to be, it needs to matter that they care about the coach that's coming through too. It shouldn't just be everyone's wasting time here. And that's how it's felt at different points.
It's only a 61-second walk from the stage to your car. We're going to keep you for about 8 minutes out of this next break.
Sure.
Is that okay?
Yeah, we can do that.
Jedi mind trick. Yeah. It's like Yoda.
Nice work.
He's a good dude.
And you convinced
I can cut that in half.
36 seconds to the car, so we may keep it till 8:48. That's the great Mike J. Schaefer, repping 24/7 Sports. He knows his brand.
Yep.
We'll be back after this on Coffee and Cream.
Rogers and Benning will be back in 4 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 3 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 2 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 1 minute. Rogers and Benning will be back in 30 seconds. Coffee and Cream with Rogers and Benning on Hail Varsity Radio.
Welcome back, Coffee and Cream in the morning on Hail Varsity Radio, powered by Currency. Damon Benning, Andrew Rogers. Let's get right into it, not waste any time as Mike Schaefer sits in studio with us. We appreciate you taking some extended time with us.
Yeah.
Talking about you're headed off to 7-on-7, and I'm like, I thought about this after Friday. We got into the conversation of, 7-on-7 isn't for everybody. And when I say everybody, I mean like the players on the field, which when you had said, hey, I kind of go to talk to these guys more than I actually get use out of seeing 7-on-7, it had me think, is that also because we just don't ever see linemen at these things? Like, is there anything out there for linemen, or is there not enough resources out there for linemen so that they can get like their own 7-on-7, but their own like type of thing? Like, does that make sense?
Yeah, and it's hard to, that one's really hard to gauge without pads on. I was watching you in Kansas.
So I was down in Missouri at that Under Armour camp. You were obviously there.
Yeah.
And as much as I like being in those settings because you get to see athleticism, when they do the one-on-ones of offensive line and defensive line, I don't know how much anyone actually gets out of it.
I agree.
Because no one's wearing pads. Some dude gets absolutely punched in the face by the defensive guy, and he's just bleeding out of the nose, and like we're supposed to consider that as a winning rep. Like, I don't know. It's tough because what it gives you when you're looking at it, and I am by no means an evaluator, but you're looking to see how quickly a lineman can move to where defender is going. And then if you're looking at the defender, I'm obviously looking to see if there's thought process into what he's doing. Like, is he trying to set him up outside to then come inside? Is he trying to do anything, or is it just brute strength? I'm going to try to go run around him. Like, I'm looking to see if there's a second level to it, not because I think that it means necessarily anything, but it tells me a little about how a player might think. And then with an offensive lineman, I'm looking to see, okay, how quickly can they get to their setup? Can they try to hold up? But when you're not wearing pads and you're watching linemen play, I think it's very difficult to take a lot from it.
Let me get you out of here on this, just because I know you see a lot more than some other people from further away that have opinions. Do you ever find yourself having to reconcile? Maybe it's not what you really think. I don't want to say that you're disingenuous, but what you know versus what you see, since you're not involved in rankings and evaluations. That has to be, because I actually think you know more than most.
I don't know that I know more than most.
I mean, you're not going to take that as a compliment. That's my opinion.
The difficult thing for me sometimes is with specific players in the state, like they'll end up with offers, or they'll end up with, opportunities, and you have to be able to weigh how much of it is projection based on what they could be versus what you actually see them as right now.
Mm.
And there's great examples for either side of it, where there's guys where it's like, I don't know why they're interested in this. And then lo and behold, he's a multi-year starter. And then there's people where it's like, oh yeah, this guy's absolutely dominating. And then he gets to the college level and he's completely just another guy on the roster. So I haven't figured out what the secret is as to how either one of these works. But a big thing that I have to do is I have to remind myself on Fridays, like if I go watch a kid and I'm not seeing him do a lot, just because of that, I might see him once a year. Like I can't just make that the entirety of my evaluation or my thought process on someone.
Really? You mean people don't do that?
More than anything, the value is just in talking to different people and, figuring out like, okay, this is what he's like at practice. This is what he's like in games. Those are very real things. There's a big difference there. When you hear a kid isn't practicing for 4 days of the week and then he shows up on Friday and his performances are sometimes amazing and sometimes terrible, there's a lot of explanation in that. Generally, you need to be consistent throughout a week to then be consistent when the gameplay happens. So, you learn a lot from just listening. That's the biggest aspect of my job. Everybody wants to talk about the rankings, but really what we should be talking about is just what you hear and you pick up from people, because that's ultimately, really what I can pass along. What I see is, an extra added benefit to it. But what I hear is usually more valuable than what my eyes are actually seeing.
Mike,
I'm telling you,
Mike, we're going to stay true to our word, because we probably could go on for
more
just based on that last point. But
well, guess what? Passing League is every Wednesday, so we could probably make something like this happen.
We're going to do it. We're
every Wednesday, Shane. You hear that?
Wednesdays with Mike.
Yeah, let's do it. Let's do it. We already have a Mike on Friday. We don't need two, right?
Yeah.
Let's have Mike on Wednesday.
We'll take
save one for
more
Friday.
Subdued version on Wednesdays. He can get ramped up, and then the real nutty guy with zero constraint on.
Yeah, well, Friday. I'm not wrestling Mike Schaefer.
Me neither.
He can't cook
wrestling me. I pulled a neck muscle golfing yesterday. I am not.
I pulled a neck muscle.
Can you still use your tools on the Blackstone?
Oh yeah, no. But
I pulled a neck muscle.
I do love your courage.
Yeah,
it's admirable, because it's a hit and miss. It's a hit and miss thing.
You just gotta try it. You see what happens. The breakfast sandwiches on Sunday were fantastic.
They looked good.
Amazing.
They looked.
There's nothing
really,
to it. You just go get
really
the
nice.
package of sausage. You roll it into the ball like you would a smash.
So you did
burger.
a smash, yeah.
Yeah, you press it.
See,
down.
I couldn't see if you had the little char on there, but I know you did.
Oh, yeah.
I saw the cheese was melted too. I was like, ooh.
Oh, it was very good.
I couldn't tell if that came out of the Jimmy Dean box or if that came
that was,
fresh from the grocery store.
That was an original. I just really want it, because you go to the store and you try to buy sausage patties and they're like this big. You can't.
They are.
You can't do
They're
anything
tiny.
with that. So you got to make it. What I'm learning is that if I
buy
want
fresh
stuff, I
ground
just have
breakfast
to make
sausage,
it.
man, after my own heart.
No,
same as the hash browns.
I'm with you.
Oh yeah, I can't imagine even. I've never did the frozen ones on there, because you're like, no, you just do this. And I was like, okay, we'll try it.
And it's cheaper.
Well, and the thing is, they don't always turn out the same, but you just constantly are like searching for that.
It's hard to get the same amount of moisture out on every on every.
Well, and then you're like, okay, so this one was really thin and it burnt too fast. So like we get, the layer of it. It's just a trial and error thing for sure.
Chafe,
man after my own heart.
Go ahead, enjoy the day. We appreciate it.
Guys.
I'll be texting you 38 times about 10:10. You'll probably still be doing interviews, but I'll wait till about 10:30.
Okay, yeah.
Because I gotta get Mike over.
Yeah,
to
he's using his phone, and all he sees is Damon Benning coming through his phone.
Stop.
He's a popular man.
Not really.
Everyone wants it. Well, I mean, there's times where I can't even get the phone call back from him. So I know he's pretty popular.
Mike J, safe travels.
Thanks, guys. Have a good one.
And it's interesting to hear him talk. He's like, because I think a lot of people aren't willing to do that. They get caught up in the moment, or there's that immediate knee-jerk react. Well, I didn't see this, but generally speaking, other coaches will tell you and other players will tell you who the dudes are. This is how it goes.
I asked that question to BC about just the valuable thing for the fan base. Like what's valuable? Is it seeing them on social media in regards to the coaching staff? And it's kind of like what Schaefer was just saying there on the back end of his answer, talking about practice. Like what he hears is valuable for his information. And that being said, it's kind of like the same line, along the same lines for the fan base, right? What is valuable to the fans are what you see on social media. Yeah. So everything has value, but it's what you get out of it at the end of the day. And he's absolutely right. You can go somewhere, see it, but does it carry the same weight as if I like talk to somebody like that does it? Or
unless you're watching it week after week after week, because I get all the. So but
even like breaking down film for you,
I was just getting ready to say, like, the Ingersons and the Burts and Carter Nelson, like they have these opinions on maybe seeing somebody. Well, I saw them play against Papio South and this, that, and I'm like, you don't even know what was going on, right? Like, Schaefer referenced. I think I know who he's talking about too. Like if a guy doesn't practice. 4 days out of the week and then tries to go on Fridays, like that may explain some of what you're seeing, right? Like
he may not be all there.
Knowing little things like that, I think absolutely matter.
And it goes back to something I always say. It's about asking a question. Like ask somebody. When you don't know something or something about someone, ask the person that would know about it, and then use that information to your benefit. Yeah. Don't just either make an assumption or just say it because you can.
I don't know if that's
the information.
I don't know if that sells enough subscriptions on recruiting websites.
And I'm sure it doesn't. But
I mean, that's kind of the reality.
Wouldn't you rather just like have the right information? Like wouldn't that benefit you more? Wouldn't that benefit like your article more if that was you writing it? Like I would say, yeah, like having the information of, say, I'm just going to use Caleb as an example. Say, he didn't practice for 4 days out of the week and like he didn't have his best game. Well, if I wrote something about Caleb, like, and I just assumed I knew what was happening, like, wouldn't that break a relationship?
Yeah.
And why not just go to the source and say like, hey man, like, I noticed that you missed practice this week. Like, what's going on? He may tell you like, I hurt my ankle and it's giving me some issues, so now it's bothering me whenever I backpedal, and like you find things out and it pays off to be right.
Yeah. Coincidentally, that's why I didn't feel like I felt like, and I told you this, it's funny because the other way I was like, I didn't feel like what he did in the state championship got enough
love because of how much time he had before that.
Yeah. Like, again, you're not cleared until Thursday.
But
we didn't touch you. You hadn't done anything for 12 weeks. Like I felt like in my head, I'm like, you guys have no idea.
It's because we as a people take it for granted.
We had no idea.
It's the expectation,
and
right?
It was the best quarterback in the last 20 years.
You're looking at one of the best players in the state right now, so you expect him to put up numbers like that, and so you don't give it justice, right?
I was pretty nervous, but anyway, like I think. So the 7-on-7s it's the useful versus talented discussion. Like you have to kind of weigh how useful it is versus how talented somebody is. I'm just hoping that my man Sim and Gavin get off to a good start. Welcome to high school 7-on-7 every Wednesday.
I'm for it.
Man, you got to do something to make up for time, man. 7-on-7 is...
And it's all about reps.
It's happening. Yeah.
It really is all about reps.
Complete agreement.
We'll be back in the top of the hour, 9 o'clock coming your way next.
Rogers and Benning will be back in 4 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 3 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 2 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 1 minute. Rogers and Benning will be back in 30 seconds. Coffee and Cream on Hail Varsity Radio with Andrew Rogers and Damon Benning.
Hey, top of the hour here on Coffee and Cream in the morning on Hail Varsity Radio, powered by Currency. Andrew Rogers, Damon Benning. Just had a really good first 2 hours of the show. If you missed any of it, go back, check out the podcast, Apple, Spotify, Amazon. The whole last hour was with Brian Christopherson and Mike Schaefer. We doubled down on 24/7 Sports. And we got some really good,
because we won't get him on his.
We won't get him Friday.
We won't get him in his usual times.
But good information from the both of them. We talked about the PGA and the Live to open up the show. And before we get into some of our next topics that we want to cover today, I want to take a moment and tell you about Zipline. Zipline Brewing is the beer for you, and you can spend your time drinking a Zipline when you're down at the College World Series. Check out the downtown Omaha tap room. Maybe find your place there, like find the spot that you like to sit, and then try to get there early because those tables fill up. But it's right by the Chuck, a block from CHI, embedded between Slowdown and Film Streams. It's designed to quench your thirst for action. They'll have the games on. You can grab yourself a Zipline and just enjoy. If you don't want to be inside Charles Schwab the entirety of the day or just the game, because it's going to be warm out there. It always is. If you're kind of feeling a little overheated, maybe go check out Zipline, get into the shade. The fans will be going. I'm sure the AC will be on too, but they open up those doors, which is really neat, behind you. So like it's kind of like an open air suite at the end of the day. Check out Zipline Brewing. Yesterday, DB, I wanted to ask you, because we got into the topic of, we were talking about the Solich and how I looked at it more from like a friendship point of view, and you looked at it from the business side of things. And then I was thinking like, well, this coaching staff doesn't want to lose momentum, which is why I asked BC about that. And I'm happy he thought the same way. And not to say that I was looking for, somebody to high five with my point, but you talk about being uncomfortable carrying, not coddling. And it kind of goes back to not wanting to lose momentum. I mean, think about being in the locker room and not really knowing where you stand yet with the program because Rule hasn't seen it before. And so you're doing everything new, everything fresh. I mean, that'd make me want to work harder. And I'm going to make sure I work harder than the next guy. And in turn, that leads to others not wanting to fall behind. So now you're starting this really good carousel effect of iron sharpening iron, the word that we constantly hear. If I'm up against the most talented on the roster, doesn't matter. I'm going to prove I can be molded into a winner. And that's what Coach Rule wants at the end of the day, a winner. That's the culture that he's building. And so the reason I say those points is yesterday we found out that Coach Frank Solich was on the College Football Hall of Fame ballot. And the question I asked you was this, and I'm happy that we can, bring it to the air now, was, when Coach Solich got fired at Nebraska and he went and just reinvented the program at Ohio, what did I ask you? I said, did he do anything similar to what Coach Rule's doing? Did he put people up in a dorm room or anything like that? And you said,
absolutely he did, right? It was important for him to kind of take what folks took for granted that was kind of already in place at Nebraska when he took over, and to reestablish himself at Ohio and to do things differently now that he'd got a little learning experience under his belt. And I think it absolutely mattered.
So the question I now ask Nebraska fans is, do you think Coach Solich did a good job at Nebraska? Do you think he was a huge piece to the Tom Osborne era? Do you think he did a really good job when he took over as head coach, even if things didn't end up the way that you thought they should or anybody thought it should? Do you think that it was good? So when you see Coach Rule doing similar things and compare it to what Coach Solich did, you have to think something's going right.
Well, for him, it's funny because the more you kind of get out and about and you don't make it as much about Nebraska, a lot of people know him for Ohio more than
Nebraska,
than they do Nebraska. So, but I think that's interesting because coincidentally, Coach Solich has more time at Nebraska in terms of playing and coaching than Coach Osborne.
And I think that's the hope for Rule, right? No, like Nebraska.
And it's like, wait a minute. Solich has been connected to Nebraska a lot longer, not a lot longer, but longer than let's say T.O.
And he won a lot at Ohio, but not like he won at Nebraska.
No, and I think if he had an outright MAC title as opposed to just the East, maybe. But taking that program from where it was to the consistency in which he had it, I don't know. Like, I think there's something to be said for being a lifelong learner, because he just didn't rest, and he was motivated by what some would consider a failure, right? And I think for him, just his personality and knowing his competitiveness, like he was going to take a second chance and he was going to get it right? Like, I just don't think I think like he would have been a little more at peace if he felt like he was playing with a full deck. I think he felt like he's kind of shorted some cards, trying to play his hand here. So, but he doesn't make excuses. I mean, it's just not who he is. But I think of the coaches that are on that ballot, it's got to be him and Coker, right?
Has to be.
You'd think.
I mean, you look at the names up and down.
And it's funny too, because it's similar situations.
Mm-hmm.
Taking over programs, kind of the coaching way. Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah, and that's kind of what I was going to ask you is, looking at it from a biased approach, like, of course that you want him to have the Hall of Fame tag next to him, but unbiasedly looking at it too, if you just look at the names on that list and you really went into detail about what they accomplished and what they overcame and the adversity that they fought, you could easily make the case that he has to be one of the two.
Yeah.
Has to be.
100%.
And then,
yeah, for sure.
And then Danny Woodhead's down on the list too.
Yeah, see, DH is underappreciated in 90% of the state. Up in the Northwest, legendary in that area, right?
Well, it's just slept on.
But
because he didn't go somewhere big.
Yeah, look at his numbers.
Oh yeah, when he was there.
How interesting is it that Solich and Woodhead are uniquely connected? Because Coach Solich was the head coach that did not offer the scholarship opportunity to Danny Woodhead coming out of high school.
Question for you now. If the transfer portal,
here we go.
If the transfer portal was what it is today,
yeah,
do you think Danny Woodhead would have had the career he did up in the Northwest, or do you think he would have ended up somewhere else?
Wow.
Because it's easy to put those
know
numbers
a
up.
little about his personality.
And maybe factor in how NIL is today too.
Would Danny have gotten his money for the opportunity to compete on a bigger stage? I kind of say yes.
I would have to think yes.
But I don't know. He's a loyal guy.
Well, and it goes back to our very first topic, right? Is this business or are you going to stay loyal?
He's a loyal guy. And I think, listen, one of the biggest mistakes we make is not understanding the whole value versus loyalty thing, right? You have a lot of people that say, get the money. Get your money. Oh man, that's selfish. You're not. Your earning power is only going to be what it is
not
for
anymore,
so long.
Right? Because everybody's doing it. Like, is it selfish if everyone's doing it?
I remember.
I don't think so.
Because I'm kind of a baby in terms of negotiations a little.
Selfish.
Like I would prefer other people represent me on my behalf because I'm just not super aggressive because historically I have been afraid for people to tell me what my worth really is, right? Not my value, my worth. And I remember Severe used to always tell me, almost since I've known him, he would say, man, get the money, get your money. And just like personality wise, it just was in kind of contrast to I mean, shoot, I'm a guy that gives away my own half, right? Oh, you need something, this kid here. You know what I mean? Like, so I just don't know if it fits my personality, but it's not to say that I disagree with the premise because I don't. I mean, get your money while you can get it. I just don't know if I could always put myself in that situation to do the same thing because it's a little uncomfortable. People ask me about speaking engagements all the time. I never, hey man, what are you willing to pay? Like, it's probably not good business. But again, I think there's sometimes a little trepidation about not wanting people to tell me what my value is. Like when you test the NIL market and some of these knuckleheads out here that are being recruited, if you listen, note to self, and you know who you are. If you're trying to negotiate NIL deals here locally before you commit, don't do that. I'm here to tell you, this staff, I just don't think they're having it.
Yeah, worry about you. Worry about the field.
I just don't
Right.
don't think, because you will find out in a hurry the difference between worth and value. And some guys that are being recruited just aren't built to handle the feedback that's come back.
Okay.
Don't do it.
So interesting you say that, because if I'm a player and I think I know what I'm worth, right? And I am trying to pull something like that off.
You better be right.
And then if I am right, what if like the coaching staff that I'm talking to doesn't want to like admit that I'm right? They want me to.
So here's the whole key. Have a competitor. Have a competitor. Have somebody else.
So it's funny that you say that, because when I was shopping for Ashley's engagement ring, you can have one guy that you go to and that you really trust, but it wasn't until I had a competitor that I got the price that I wanted to get on it.
Yeah.
Right. Have somebody compete for you, because you're going to make the other person want you more, or do what you want them to do to get you there.
Because I think at the end of the day, this is hard. Are you ready? It's a DBism.
I'm listening.
You have to be willing to walk away from the deal. You have to be willing to walk away from the deal. Sometimes it doesn't feel good. You have to be willing to walk away from the deal. If you're not, you're going to find yourself in a precarious situation, if not compromised.
You know, I almost wonder too, speaking, because we had mentioned Jeff Christie with BC, if there was any of like similar conversations or feelings for him of value versus worth when he gets let go at Nebraska.
I felt like there were a couple of guys that I read, at least online, that I felt painted the departure in an accurate light. You know, the low-hanging fruit guys and gals may say, well, you had to, right? I mean, it was inevitable. But once you get inside the numbers, statistically, team ERA, whip, where they ranked in the conference.
He stayed pretty consistent. He had the drop in 21, but I mean, he got back up into the 40s.
He had a legitimate case.
The only
maybe if he, except for the
that I think was
the development of a third guy, a third weekend starter.
But you kind of found that in Will Walsh.
Yeah,
midway through the season, you found that, but you couldn't find the midweek
so
guy.
You know, I think this is total speculation. When 3 or 4 guys that could be potentially part of what you were doing declined to come back,
you kind of have to open your eyes and think,
what else is going
right
on here, right? Because what's one of my favorite things to always ask? Why did we get here? Like, if you truly want to grow and be of the growth mindset, how'd we get here?
And I'm sure there were some exit meetings too, and maybe using deductive reasoning, the coaching staff, like Will Bolt, could say, okay, like maybe this is something I need to change, whether it's my friend or not, maybe for the sake of the team. And you have to do what's good for the team and the school versus what you do for your friend.
Yeah. And
because it's a business.
And what are their options, right? Like, I think leverage is always key, right? I mean, you got a guy sitting right there in your dugout as a player development director that Nebraska fans are familiar with. Now, the optics are, hey man, just go with that guy. I don't know if that's the case or not, right? That comes with its own set of things that would be in play if you go with the in-house hire, right? It's an easy transition. Doesn't always make it the right one though, because we don't really know what the dynamics were behind the scenes, because he's been on that staff the whole time. Did we just compartmentalize him that he was only doing that job and not helping out in other areas? I would think that you would take advantage of Rob's prowess across the board, right? Even though his job says one thing.
And you would think he's the obvious candidate to take over, at least based on what we know about him. But, you know, one of the big thing I point to is the problem for Nebraska this year was what? It was pitching. It wasn't offense. We know what the offense was capable
See,
of.
I kind of disagree with
but
that.
we know and you know what? Maybe the reason I say this is because they set a record, because they hit numbers, because they have guys going to the draft outside of Olsen.
When you lost
top 50.
When you lost to Maryland in the Big Ten tournament, was it pitching?
No, it was offense.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean I point to offense just based on that one game. I'm looking at it for the totality of the season. And what you point to through the totality is that pitching just wasn't there.
Well, the reoccurring theme that I heard for weekends, they won 6 out of 8 series, though. Right? Like, I think situational
hitting was a thing.
Yeah,
but you still have
that lob number left on base. That's
right.
a thing. When I listen to Coach Bolt's pressers and talk about competitive at bats, like for some reason that's in my head. I think to bury our heads in the sand and say, "Oh man, it was just a pitching thing." I don't know. I mean, there's obviously
so pitching wise. Who do you feel good about right this season? Because for majority of the season, I didn't feel good about Olsen. Like I mean, I knew he was one of the top guys, but I still didn't feel good about him. I felt good about Jace, and I felt good about Walsh. And then in the bullpen, I felt good about Hawkins, and sometimes I felt good about Shanneman. And so there just weren't enough options there. And because of the small sample size, I also think that hurts a pitching coach because you can make up for offense with any of the other 9.
It can, but how much blame do I put on hitting batters? How much blame from a pitching coach do I put on inability to work from ahead in the count? Because I'm pretty sure that's not coached, but I do buoy that with if you're not coaching, if you're allowing it, you're coaching it, right? So there's always that dynamics. I just know.
Yeah, I don't know how much a coach can fix command though. A command thing is upstairs for a player. I mean, you can maybe help them get there.
But you're kind of making my case, though, when we assess fault to Christie, how much of the player ownership is in that in terms of part of that development?
But then it goes back to development, right? As a coach, you have to be able to develop. You have to be able to adjust with your player because I don't ever want to put the blame on the player. It's kind of like what you do in Major League Baseball, right? When a team isn't playing well, the Cardinals, for example, who's taking the heat right now? Is it the players or is it the coach or the manager? Marmol's taking the heat. Like, why isn't Marmol able to lead this team? Why isn't our Marmol able to figure out the inconsistencies of this team? So the coach takes the heat.
Okay, but so should like Mazzulla tell Jason Tatum? Should Mazzulla say to Jason Tatum, "Hey, listen, you get a lot of smaller matchups. You settle for a lot of jump shots. Do what these other guys do when they back guys down in the posts and get easier shots based on who's defending them. You need to stop settling for contested, difficult shots. Kobe put guys in the post. Jordan put guys in the post. LeBron puts guys in the post. Like even Devin Booker, for is pull-uppy as he can be, finds a way to take advantage of matchups on the floor depending on who's guarding him. I never got the sense that I just used Jason Tatum as an example because they brought Mazzulla back, and some people felt like, he should get fired. Some of that's on the player, man. Right? Like,
and I get that.
Like situational awareness.
I think it's just because it's a different sport too.
And also because you have more control in baseball.
As a coach or as a player?
As a player. You have way more control as a pitcher. It's you. It's you and your catcher. Right? Like Christie can't go out there and throw strikes for you. Is he allowing you to throw balls in practice? I see. I don't know. Right. In baseball, when I have the ball and I have the mitt, I feel like I'm in more control than if I'm playing 5-on-5 and I'm not handling the basketball. Somebody has to get me the ball. I don't have to worry about where help side defense. I don't have to worry about situational ball screens. Are they icing? Are they hedging? If I am the primary ball handler, when I'm on the bump, it's me and that guy that I'm playing catch with. I feel just naturally, I feel like I have more control.
Right. Well, as a player, okay, I can see what you're saying. But when you don't have the control, the pitching coach has to be there to find that control.
Didn't we just have this debate about NBA coaches and ultimately how much
they do?
Yeah.
Well, and that's another reason why I said it's different, because I don't think NBA coaches do hardly anything. And that may just be a me thing, my own observation. I could be completely wrong. But when it comes to baseball, you have so many things you have to manage throughout a game, whether it's, hey, when do I go to my bullpen? Like, oh, is he losing his stuff here? Like, oh, is his velo's down? Oh, I have to help him rehab, whatever.
So are we getting into like spin rate and release points, or like, because that's ultimately some of the things that pitching coaches can teach you.
I also think it's a little bit of, where can I get the most out of this player? And so I was talking to my buddy that pitches for the Redbirds when they were up in Omaha, and he's like, "Man, did he throw you a ball?" No, he did sign one for me. I had to get it. So I
did Ray take it from you?
Uh-oh. Shane, give me some Carl Lewis. Come on, Shane.
Anyway,
and so I was talking to there it is. I was talking to Grant, and he's like, yeah, the reason my stuff isn't like I'm down this year is because they tried to implement a slider into my arsenal, and I'd never pitched a slider before, so I got hurt doing it.
Mm-hmm. I remember you telling me this.
But they did that because they knew it would help differentiate me from other players. But still, ultimately, it hurt me because I'm trying to figure something out. So a little bit of that goes into the coaching I'm talking about, is when you're trying to put together the best team possible and make your team different, sometimes you run into issues with the player of how do they respond to what you're trying to make them do, whether that is command on the field. I'm not saying, hey, they went to Shanneman and said, you got to throw a changeup. You have to throw a changeup to make you different.
Mm-hmm.
And he just didn't have control over his changeup, and he's been trying to figure it out throughout the year. So then it goes back to my whole development.
Drew Christo
point.
with a secondary pitch, Kyle Perry.
Right.
Kind of regret.
And that's what I also mean by development, not just like, hey, a freshman, hey, you're pitching like you're in high school, man. Like, you got to remember, you're in college now. You just got to pitch. You got to work at it. You got to pitch. There's just a lot of changes with pitching that always have me thinking, like, I don't want to put the blame totally on the player, because it may be what they're asking him to do.
But in the same vein, I'm not just trying to back the truck over Christie either. I mean, Schwelly just or Shanneman just plunking
and
guys?
maybe it's aggressive of me to say, hey, hitting was perfect this year, and by no means am I saying that, because we've talked about it all through the season with situational hitting and seeing more pitches and things like that. But when I assess the season as a whole, the thing I felt the least comfortable about was pitching. Anytime I saw who the starting pitcher was, I'm like, I hope he has it today. Like, oh, I see Shanneman get brought in. I'm like, man, could you imagine having somebody else so he doesn't have to throw 3 innings? And when he's losing command, you're not relying on anybody else. You're like, I want to try to get more out of Shanneman. We need Shanneman to be the guy.
I'm listening. Maybe this is a player thing in me. I always want control, right? I know folks teach me ball security, stuff like that. Like, if I put it on the carpet, I think I should probably have to own it.
Oh, and you should. You know what I mean? You absolutely should.
Stuff like that.
And I agree with you that a pitcher has to own his.
If I tell you when
command.
you get high hat, get to face up 1, play underneath 2, and you can't do that, I don't know, man. Sometimes it's on the player.
Yeah. No, I understand. I understand where you're at. Yep. Andy Kendeigh up next.
Rogers and Benning will be back in 5 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 4 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 3 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 2 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 1 minute. Rogers and Benning will be back in 30 seconds. Coffee and Cream with Rogers and Benning on Hail Varsity Radio.
Hey, welcome back. Coffee and Cream in the morning on Hail Varsity Radio, powered by Currency. Benning and Drew Rogers. 515 Dave on YouTube doesn't like my point on NBA coaches.
Neither does Robbie.
He's like, what in the world? What do you mean they don't do it? He said it's insane that NBA coaches don't do as much as major league managers.
Show me it.
Well, I mean, I'm in agreement because I do think we undersell the management and the X's and O's, right? Like, and I see, and I know we got to get to AK, but I just use Frank Vogel at Los Angeles as an example, right? After being relieved of his duties, I think it was in Charlotte. Like, I know his coaching mattered with that roster. So it's hard for me to undersell because I think I've seen it firsthand, knowing that roster as well as I do what guys do differently. I think Darvin Ham taking that team where it was a year ago and getting to the Western Conference Finals, I think coaching, I think coaching absolutely matters.
Right. But then you look at what the Phillies were able to do last year with Rob Thompson when he takes over a team and brings them to the World Series. Like they needed a culture change, and he was able to establish that. In the NBA, I don't know how often I see culture changes.
I saw an interim coach take over a franchise with a losing record halfway through the season, and they won a Stanley Cup. Did you see that?
Yeah, I did.
I actually lived it. In your backyard.
I lived it.
Right?
Mm-hmm. I'm not saying coaching doesn't matter. I said I don't see it in the NBA as something that matters as much. Let's go to AK. Andy Kendeigh joining the show now. Andy, good morning.
Morning, boys. How you guys doing?
AK, so we know we both have an affinity for Rob McCartney. Did you give him some pointers? Did he help you out? You guys tag teaming that Chronicles was pretty legit, man. Rob can ask some questions.
Rob's a pro's pro, man. Rob knew exactly where he was going. He is very, let's just say he's always prepared, man. Like we talked, so we got the call that we were going to get Coach Rule one-on-one last Tuesday. And, you know, we just kind of made the plan, and we did this once before. We've done this once before with Trev, where, you know, Rob takes more of a big picture, 30,000-foot view deal, and I get a little bit more into the nuts and bolts, even though you can talk for hours. You know, there's so many questions you have, and then, you know, the clock is ticking and all that stuff. So you got to maximize your time there. And Rob is the master at maximizing the time. So props to Rob. And the Chronicle is up on KTV.com if you missed it. It's a long form interview with Coach Rule, and
take your time to watch it though.
Absolutely, it takes. You know, there's two big segments of about almost 10 minutes a pop. So, you know, we had start to finish about 25, 30 minutes with Coach Rule, and about 20 of the 25 made the air. So that gives you a good idea what it's all about.
Kendeigh, you know, all morning we've been talking about worth and value, and I mean, it started with the PGA, and then it just most recently.
Andy, you've been in some intense negotiations.
Yeah, and most recently it ended with Jeff Christie, and you know, I kind of want to ask, just based on the experience that you have, because I've been in similar rooms like you before. Now you've done it much longer than I have. But how much do you think worth and value bleed into sports? And do you think it's too much? Do you think it's the right amount? Or do you think, like, you know, a lot of times you just get loyalty and that's that?
Well, I think sports is a general reflection of society, right? You know, you are worth what somebody is willing to pay for what you're worth. You know what I mean? I mean, if somebody values you at a certain level and that level doesn't meet your expectation, and then you have a real choice on your hands. So, you know, I think everyone walks into a negotiation thinking that they're worth probably more than they ultimately get. But in the same token, you know, you have to stand up for what you believe in any negotiation. The LIV Golf and the PGA thing is fascinating. I think there's multiple layers, obviously, to it. I think the big loser in all this is the PGA commissioner, because he looks, man, I'll be surprised if he has a job next week. I think the PGA players are tipped. I don't blame them one bit. I mean, you know, what does loyalty get you? You got them. Other than, you know, standing by your principles and having a clear conscience, I think that's what it gets you, right? But if you're So you're saying that, oh, wait, we stood up for the PGA, and you're going to allow these guys who took checks for whatever, $100 million or whatever they got to go to live, and they get to come back, and we don't get the $100 million? Like, how's that fair? So I think there's a whole bunch of layers. And why did the PGA cave the way they did, or did they cave? And why did the PGA do what they did at that point? I think it's fascinating, and I don't know if this is stuff that people will be writing books about. And I think that we just have some pretty surface knowledge of what actually happened here. But the ultimate deal is, we're going to finally get rid of the USFL of golf, and we'll see what happens here moving forward. And I don't know, where is anyone clamoring for team golf? That's the thing that comes out.
Yeah, I said it immediately yesterday on social media. I'm like, so is there going to be like more team? Especially after I read the letter, I was like, should we do more team golf, or what are we doing? But let me
I kind of like team golf.
I
love scrambles.
Best ball.
I love scrambles. Where's the cart girl? Bring her out.
That is team golf. Like, I like team golf when I'm playing in a 2-man scramble and we're just hanging out and having a couple pops, right? But I don't want to watch professionals and the Vipers and the Jugheads or the Diamond Heads or whatever. Who cares about these team names? Nobody cares. Nobody follows this stuff. Just show me golf. Get everybody under one roof, and let's play some golf and play some majors and get everybody rolling in the same direction, in my opinion. But if that's what it takes, that's what it takes. I don't know.
AK. I was talking to BC about the in-state stuff and the whole value versus worth thing. How much, you've been here a while, coming from a market like in Wisconsin, how much do you think that part of this, like what happened with Liv, where the whole value versus worth thing, there appears to be something different, have we seen play out with in-state recruiting, right? Where the fan base and maybe sometimes the high school players may have may interchange the two, but the staff hasn't always seen the worth, where you think those two words may actually be closer together than they have ever been when it comes to recruiting this state now. Value versus worth.
Yeah, and I think, I've always been under the assumption that if I'm a coaching staff and two guys are equal talent-wise, and one guy's in-state and one guy's out-of-state, easy. That's a slam dunk choice about who you take, right? And I would think that you and I know Coach Rule puts a priority on recruiting the state now, and it's just a matter of, are the guys right fits, and et cetera, et cetera. The real tough question to answer is, what are their, because they don't go necessarily under the same criteria of a top recruit as other people do. Some of the recruits, if you look at them, they've got some different characteristics of all 3 stars and all 4 stars are not created equal, and so what avenue does Matt
Isn't that
Rule
the
and
truth?
his coaching staff? Yeah, but that's the whole thing. Like, Matt Rule may prioritize a 3-star over a 4-star, and you're saying, huh? But he's got his own way of doing things, and that's the beauty of a new coach and a new regime, and see where this thing takes them. Because I'm fascinated to see how this speed thing works out for them.
It always seemed to me like over the past 20 years, the fan base in the high schools thought there was a lot more value for the prospects than the staff actually felt it was worth in the work they put out.
Yeah, no question. And we're going to find out pretty soon. I cannot wait until we get done with this camp season and we get real camp started.
Yeah, good point, AK. Good point.
AK, we appreciate you, man. Enjoy the next 2 weeks off from our show. Enjoy this Wednesday. Beautiful day outside. We will talk again in a couple weeks.
Sounds great. Enjoy your break, fellas.
Thanks, AK.
When we come back, we're going to play a game. I was going to play a new game with DB, but then I'm like, ooh, if Schaefer's in, we could do 2 for you. But then we ended up just talking sports with Schaefer like we probably should do. So we're going to actually play 2 for you.
Sports.
When we get back.
Rogers and Benning will be back in 4 minutes. Rogers and Benning. We'll be back in 3 minutes. Rogers and Benning. We'll be back in 2 minutes. Rogers and Benning. We'll be back in 1 minute. Rogers and Benning will be back in 30 seconds. Coffee and Cream with Rogers and Benning on Hail Varsity Radio. Now one of Damon's favorite games and one of Shane's favorite games.
Is this the game where I have to write stuff down?
Well, maybe not so much Shane.
Yes, Shane. This would be the game.
Yes, it's 2 for you.
All right, let's do it.
Wow.
Oh, it's that time, 2 for you. And yes, Shane, this is the game where you have to write stuff down. And I want you to write this down right now because you need to take your car over to Dingman's if you have any issue with it. Right? They have 4 locations. Just type them in online, dingmans.com. You can find those locations there. Write down the address, hold on to that note, plug it into your phone, take your car over. That's how you get it fixed up, and you will deal with some of the best people while you're there. And plus, after you're done with your visit, they'll give you, what was it, a little chip, right?
Yeah, you get a little token, and you get to put it in one of their
donation jars.
Yep.
And you get to choose where you want the donation from Dingman's to go. Really cool initiative, and it's unique to them.
Don't let all the cars out front fool you. Sometimes they're waiting on parts, and you can get in, and I know they're busy because they're good, but be patient.
And that,
right.
And you pay for what you get, right?
Yeah.
And so if there's a lot of cars there, you're probably at the right spot. Versus, oh, wow, no one's at this location. Maybe I'll take my car there.
Yeah.
You may end up with 3 tires on your car when you drive it off the lot. No,
Ominous.
It's always 4 at Dingman's.
Shane, are you ready? Are you guys going? My favorite Sam McKinnon drop ever.
You ready to play?
I'm ready.
888-638-4876. If you want, we want to give away some Hail Varsity Club gift cards. So,
yeah, the pesto chicken pizza. And just the chunks of chicken. Need to probably check that out. I think the wings are they honey barbecue?
Well, they're always fire, but
yeah, the pesto chicken, I'd probably give that a
888
chunks. I'm all about that.
638.
Yeah, Shane, and it's in your wheelhouse, man.
4876. Pick up the phone now. 888-638-4876. You don't have to do much. We play the game for you. All it takes is 2 right answers to win yourself a gift card. Let's play.
We got to get back in sync.
DB, you want to go first? You and me?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, Shane, you're going to be our countdown eventually. Does that make sense?
Go.
You want me to ask the questions like comic books? Who's
No,
who's
no.
the best character in comics ever?
No.
Yeah, let's have.
No.
We're gonna
Don't
go.
want you ad-libbing.
All right, DB, you ready?
Yep.
A Clint Eastwood movie.
Well, see, no, come on, this is easy.
Well, I know my favorite, but you've never seen it, so I'm not saying it.
But what if I said it?
Bronco Billy.
Hey, a rich person.
Okay.
A famous Kevin.
Ooh, toughie.
I'm gonna go with this one.
Okay.
And a freshwater fish.
I don't even know what that is.
A fish you'd see in a lake.
Okay. Hope I get this right. People talk about it a lot.
That's a bunch of crap.
That's not what I was going to say. I appreciate the hint, though, asswipe.
Okay. Shane, you are going to count this thing down.
You ready?
I'm ready.
I can't believe
Are you
I
changing
changed.
an answer?
Yeah.
DB.
All right, I won't. All right.
DB, if you change the answer and I had the one you used to have, I'll be
Okay.
mad.
All right, I'm going
But
back
if you change it to the right one, I'll be super happy.
All right. Okay. I'm ready. Yes, I would be mad.
Okay. It is a Clint Eastwood movie.
3, 2, 1.
Gran Torino.
Yes.
I changed it to Outlaw Josie Wells,
Yep,
and I
that's what I
changed
would've
it back to Gran Torino.
We talked about Gran Torino this week.
I know, but I have the Outlaw Josie Wells T-shirt, so I thought you may be thinking of that.
Ooh, yes, you do.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it was fresh on the mind, like the freshwater fish we'll get to eventually.
Oh, I missed that.
A rich
Damn it.
person.
3, 2, 1.
Bill
Warren
Gates.
Buffett.
Oh, you gotta say Warren.
I would think.
I would think, yeah, it's probably the right answer for the area.
Yeah,
And we also brought him up this week. I brought him up this week.
another contest, another car for old Dingmans. Thanks, Darcy. Collision.
A famous Kevin.
3, 2, 1.
Costner. I had Kugler on the brain, and then I went with National.
What do you think I'm gonna say? That's my dude.
If you went against Kugler, what would you have said?
Hart.
Oh, okay. That's probably a good one, too. Okay.
Not happy with you right now, Drew.
Yeah, but I didn't go local. Yeah, that definitely
I
killed
guarantee
us.
we're off. Hopefully, people don't pick us going forward because we were in lockstep, and I know we're gonna miss this one.
Are we gonna mutually part ways?
Yes. Yes. Even though my staff is better than you're giving me credit for.
A freshwater fish.
3, 2, 1.
Bass. Dang. We got the first one.
That was so bad.
That wasn't good.
We weren't even in the same hemisphere.
And you almost changed the first answer to be completely out of
I know we would have got shut out
of the galaxy.
Gosh.
All right.
Should we try me and Shane?
At least you didn't say like Northern Pike or something.
No, that's something you would have said.
Yeah. Northern Pike's good.
You'd have said.
I would have said.
This dude would have said koi.
You would have said the guy that was ice fishing that fell under and is just
I
buried
would have said
down there.
bass.
Really?
Well, that's my favorite. I mean, that's the standard fish.
Bass?
Bass fishing.
Doesn't
yes.
walleye taste better than bass?
I mean,
Like I would.
I don't know
you have,
enough.
You have.
I don't eat bass.
I don't know enough.
So I eat walleye more than I eat bass. So I'd say
I've
yes.
never eaten bass either.
You have Cabela's right across the street, and you have the.
Is that a bass on the
The
thing?
competitor is
Normally I eat crappie
Bass
and
fishing?
have like fish sticks with crappie, but I don't normally do that with bass.
Yeah, that's why I said it was a bunch of crap.
Oh, okay.
I did learn a lot about what makes an invasive fish, though. Yeah, it was a whole Twitter thread. One of the greatest threads ever. So useful.
Did you see the one, the fish thing yesterday of they decapitated this fish head and then put the Coke can in its mouth and it could still bite down on the Coke can? Oh my goodness.
Yeah, so I was worried about what happened at Standing Bear, and then I asked the question, and the thread was so informative, it was sick.
Was it informative or was it sarcastic?
No. Well, it was some guys like killed the comment section,
I
right?
loved it.
But there were enough people giving me good info because I'm like, how did the fish get there anyway? But it's what people fish with. Sometimes they dump and stuff, and then those fish. I learned a lot.
Oh yeah.
I said, wait, how did there so much green vegetation, plant life already? Dead fish are good fertilizer. I'm like, oh, that's gross.
Good to know.
Glad I moved out of the neighborhood.
All right, you guys ready?
I'm ready to kill this. Let's do it.
He said kill. Shut up, Shane.
I'm ready. Let's do it.
A city that starts with the letter B.
Okay. Omar's coming.
An orange food excluding oranges. So an orange food, but you can't say oranges.
Okay.
A Nickelodeon TV show.
Ooh, that's tough. I don't know that.
Yes, you do.
I never watched Nickelodeon.
I just think about talking through your nose.
Is that pretty good impersonation?
That is. Yeah, you're close.
I don't know what that is, but I'll just put one down. Okay.
And something you'd see in the sky. Like if you looked up at the sky, what would you see?
Okay. I'm good.
I think this is an easy 3 out of 4.
I think
but with Shane, anything's possible. Shane, you ready? I heard the ding. That means he's good to go. DB, you ready?
I'm ready.
A city that starts with the letter B. 3, 2, 1.
Baltimore.
I probably would have said Boston.
Yeah.
Here we go. An orange food, but you can't say oranges.
I did say Omar's coming, but I know he
You
hasn't
did.
seen The Wire.
You did.
I haven't seen The Wire. I'm sorry.
I haven't really either. I just know that.
Is that a Baltimore thing?
Very much so.
Okay, cool.
It sure as heck isn't a Bismarck thing.
What if he? Now that's something he would have said.
Yeah. Or Boise.
Yeah. Bismarck.
Baton Rouge.
He does love
Baton Rouge.
He does love Eric Chenander. You probably would have said Boise.
Yeah. Okay, an orange food excluding oranges. 3, 2, 1.
Peach.
Carrots.
Carrots, I think, was the right answer.
Peach.
It's orange.
Peach has its own color.
Peach is like orange, red, yellow.
No, wait. Peach is a crayon.
It is. It
Shane.
is.
It's its own color.
That is also true. Now I'm siding more with DB here.
Okay. All right.
The skin of the orange, I know where you were going, has some orange in it, but that wasn't the question. Just an orange food.
Dude said peach.
Although, if you get them out of the can, I can see them being a little orange yellow.
Okay.
But it's still wrong.
Okay.
Well, we're not going to get
I did say Baltimore, and I should have said Boston.
A Nickelodeon TV show. 3, 2, 1.
Rugrats.
Inspector Gadget.
It's Inspector Gadget. That's a movie.
It's a cartoon.
It is on
Is it?
Nickelodeon, but it's random. It's random.
It's the only cartoon I've ever seen on
You've never
Nickelodeon.
seen Rugrats?
No.
With my dad, Tommy.
Oh, is that what that's from?
Yeah. You got to Google him. He wears some glasses
He
like
was
yours.
close. Okay.
And Angelica? Really? Damn, Shane, I even tried to stay in your wheelhouse, kind of.
Rugrats.
What a debacle. Dude said Inspector Gadget.
Why the hell else wouldn't I say it?
He goes, well, I know I'm not getting this one. Well, you guys may not even go 1 for 4.
No, we're not getting this one.
Something you see in the sky. 3, 2, 1.
The
Clouds.
sun. That's my own fault.
Did you have clouds?
I had clouds.
You didn't scratch it out, though. You just
But I
said the
didn't
wrong
say,
thing.
No, I said what I said.
You said what you thought
I
it was going to
panicked.
be right.
I should have just stuck to my guns. But because you know what I figured Shane would say? Well, some days it's sunny and there are no clouds.
You're not supposed to look up at the sun anyway.
Oh, man. somebody's feeling a little personal injury, they should call Dire Law.
Oh, I got the number, man. Listen, 393-7529. Hey, visit Dire.law. Hey, listen, I'd like to report an injury. It may not be personal. It's one I inflicted. Can you guys help me out? Visit Dire.law. 393-7529. Thanks. Call me back. Wow. That guy used the phone.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know the number.
That's it for today. We'll see you tomorrow.